And welcome everybody to the Fantasy and Frames pregame show for week 11. Look, I'm excited. I'm running the shots again this week, so you never know what could happen. Speaking of you never know what could happen, we have an awesome guest joining us, friend of the Fantasy and Frames family, Colby Conway from Fantasy Alarm, as well as Mr. Kyle Ziegler. So without further ado, folks, let's get this thing going. And as we do, folks, every single week we cover here on the Fantasy and Frames pregame show every single game, talk about the fantasy relevant players from every single game. And most importantly, we also make sure we answer all of your start and sit questions. And it could be any question in fantasy football related, start and sit, Dynasty, IDP, you name it. We're here to help you with that. But let's start with our guest here, Colby Conway. How are you?
I am doing well. It's a exciting football season here. I know, Kyle, there I see the Titans shirt, so I'm assuming there's some fandom there. But as a Texans fan, after the past couple of years, I'm enthralled, excited, ecstatic to say that Sundays are fun again, Jorge. So I am on top of the moon right now.
Yeah, ever since the Titans have been taking off this year, I have thought of two people, you. And I've thought of one of our guys here, Les, who I believe you met at the Expo,
Sure did.
who is also a Texans fan. So very excited for you all. Kyle, how are you doing this morning, man?
I'm doing great. Thank you. My 3-year-old kind of got a big knot on her head last night, ran into a doorknob there. But other than that, she's doing good. We iced her up and she slept good. I think she's still sleeping. So if she comes in, I apologize for that. But she's much better now though.
Very nice. Very nice. All right. So let's get into some news. Let's get into some, not news, but let's get into the news of the week, which is covering every single game. Just a reminder on bye, we got the Falcons, Colts, Patriots, and New Orleans Saints. Let's talk about the first game here. Dallas at Carolina, 42 over under, minus 10.5. Major injuries here. Hayden Hurst is out, but let's face it, he's been out of our fantasy lineups for most of the season anyhow, so we weren't really paying attention there. I do want to talk about, I guess it's not so much the elephant in the room as it is the Pollard in the room, and that is Tony Pollard. He just has not been the guy a lot of people were drafting, in the early rounds of their drafts this year. The past 3 weeks, he has been the RB 34 in points with an average of 6.4. I'm going to throw out some names here, guys, and I want you to tell me, would you start them over Tony Pollard this week? And Colby, since you're the guest, we'll start with you. Jerome Ford over Tony Pollard.
No.
James Cook.
No.
Alexander Madison.
No.
What about Raheem Mostert?
No. Those first ones are easy. I'm very high on Pollard this week. I'll talk about it a bit. I really like him. I think he's going to be an RB1 this week. Maybe not overall, but he's in a really good spot. Mostert gives me a little pause, but I'd probably still go Pollard.
All right. Kyle, let me ask you: Brian Robinson or Tony Pollard this week?
Tony Pollard.
Wow, this is a lot. Expecting.
I'm right there with Colby. I'm high on him as well this week.
All right, Colby, tell the folks why you're high on Tony Pollard this week.
It's the touchdown is coming this week. I know it's been since I believe week 1 when he scored multiple scores and he hasn't found the end zone yet. It's coming. Carolina's been so bad against the run this season. That should continue. This just seems. I hate to go down narrative street because, when you go down that street, sometimes you hit, sometimes it burns you a little bit. But this seems like an opportunity after last week when they blew the barn doors off the Giants. They just let Dak throw and throw. They're up 30. Let Dak throw. It doesn't matter. Trying to get the other receivers involved. If I'm not mistaken, I think in a press availability stint or whatever you want to call it for CeeDee Lamb, he basically said the plan is to get, quote, TP going, which I'm assuming is Tony Pollard. So if that's the case, this seems like an opportunity where they're going to give him every opportunity, even if they are up, to kind of pad those stats and get it going again. And Carolina's allowed the second most fantasy points to running backs this season. I wouldn't be shocked if Tony Pollard goes for 100+ and 2 scores. We're taking a walk down narrative street, but all of the stars are aligning for Pollard here in week 11.
Kyle, there?
Not much more to add to that. I mean, if all I can say is if they can give Tony Pollard 18 to 20 touches today, yeah, he's definitely going over 100. And this is his opportunity right here. I mean, like he said, Carolina gives up a lot of yards on the ground. This should be a Tony Pollard game.
And when you like red zone numbers too, because that's what really matters, especially like for running backs, Pollard is the second most red zone carries this season. So I'm looking over at Pro Football Reference. Inside the 20, McCaffrey's got 38 with 8 touchdowns. Pollard's got 37 carries with just 2. Jacobs 35 with 5 scores. Kenneth Walker 34 carries, 6 touchdowns. Positive touchdown regression is coming for Pollard, and it starts here this week.
All right, let's talk about the wide receiver position here for the Dallas Cowboys. We know the Carolina Panthers have been kind of stingy, quote unquote, against the wide receiver position. I believe they're allowing the 3rd fewest fantasy points per game to the position. We know CeeDee Lamb is going to get peppered with targets. We know he's going to get his despite the tough matchup here. But let's talk about Brandon Cooks. The past 3 weeks, averaging 13.9 points per game, has been the wide receiver 11 and half PPR scoring. Ever since that Chargers game, we've been kind of thinking, hey, maybe they're finally starting to incorporate things. Colby, you just mentioned it. Dak Prescott has been throwing the ball a lot more. Is he even in a tough matchup this week, a wide receiver 2, just because we're thinking this is going to be such a one-sided affair here for the Dallas Cowboys? Or is there any reason for pause given just how effective Carolina has been at shutting down some wide receivers this year? What are your thoughts, Colby?
Yeah, closer to a flex than a wide receiver 2. It seems like that second receiver, last week, Michael Gallup had the 2 big plays, found the end zone, so that's good. That second wide receiver spot for Dallas, I think you're just going to have to get lucky picking the right guy that week if that's what you're looking at. So I would put Cooks closer to flex than wide receiver 2 this week. Like I said, this week just feels like a big Tony Pollard week. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb will be involved because he has to be, but I would put Cooks closer to flex than wide receiver 2.
I agree.
Kyle, let me ask you, what are your thoughts on Adam Thielen? He started the year off hot, then all of a sudden things have just taken a turn from the worse. Frank Reich gives up play to Call of Duty. We saw the decline in play. Frank Reich now is like, oh, I'm taking it back. I'm going to take it back now. What are your thoughts here? Is Adam Thielen somebody that, you're starting but you're flexing, or is it somebody that you are desperately scrambling to find a replacement for?
Well, in my start sit article here at Fantasy and Frames, I actually have Adam Thielen as a sit. I definitely would sit Adam Thielen this week against that Dallas Cowboys defense. There is plenty of opportunity, plenty of other wide receivers that you could pivot to instead of Adam Thielen. I'm trying to look here at the Fantasy Pros rankings right now, see where they have Adam Thielen. They had him pretty high, I thought. I would rather start Terry McLaurin, even Michael Pittman, Dotson. I'm just not very big on Adam Thielen against that Dallas Cowboys defense.
All right. Switching over to Carolina, I guess staying with Carolina, I say Adam Thielen, there's the situation at running back where it's been Chuba Hubbard basically taking over for Miles Sanders. Is there any reason to think Chuba is a viable fantasy option for managers this week? Even in leagues where it's like, I got like 3 flexes and, 2 running backs, like even in like these super deep competitive leagues, any what about you, Colby? What are your thoughts there?
It would have to be anyone who's familiar with like the Kings Classic setup where start 2 running backs, 3 flex, 14 team. At that point, you just need somebody who touches the field more than like 7 snaps a game and they become kind of fantasy viable. Outside of that, in shallower leagues, even if you do have multiple running backs and multiple flex spots, I would imagine you have to have somebody maybe not necessarily better than Hubbard in terms of like volume, but I mean, there's not many worse matchups for a running back out there. So I would be hard pressed to look to anybody on that Carolina in terms of the rushing attack.
Also, speaking of the Kings Classic, so Tyler Heil here, Fantasy and Frames, and we faced each other twice in 1 week, both in the auction and snake of the Len Dawson division. And we had a deal that if whoever's team won, or excuse me, whoever's teams lost would get a pie in the face on our Dynasty 365 show. And Tyler lost both of them. And he had his kids and his wife come on the podcast last week and absolutely demolish his face with pies. So it was fantastic to watch.
Did you clip it? Do you have a clip here that you can play? Nice.
Nope, you don't have the clip here, but I will post it on social media. And his wife even made a GIF out of it, which was fantastic.
Perfect.
Switching to the other side of the ball, let's talk about some IDP relevant players here. Micah Parsons, tell me if you heard this name before. He's pretty good. Damone Clark, finishes the LB 47 with 9.9 points. So it's not horrible. I think the news here for Dallas that we need to pay attention to is people who may or not be aware that there was this player by the name of Marquise Bell who on Sleeper is both defensive back and linebacker eligible. And he was kind of like a cheat code because he was getting you linebacker tackle numbers that you could insert into your defensive back spot, and which is the goal. You want your defensive backs to get as many tackles as you can, and then you hope for interceptions or big plays in that regard. And for a couple weeks, he was doing great. He had a 83.5% defensive snap share. Then all of a sudden that jumped down to 39, and we saw Rashaan Evans kind of take the LB2 spot there away from Marquise Bell. So it's really Damone Clark and Rashaan Evans at linebacker, neither of which I'm super excited to start this week. It's really the Micah Parsons show, to be honest with you. Jaron Kearse, Donovan Wilson, they've been kind of disappointing this year, so I think you can find better options there. On Carolina, Brian Burns, yes, he does have a tough matchup going against this Dallas Cowboys offensive line. But, he is somebody who's an elite pass rusher, and you can't really discount that per se. Frankie Louvu, linebacker, one of the things about Frankie Louvu is that he's been really good, not just as a tackling linebacker, but as a edge rusher also. So he can really do a lot of things all over the field. So you can really appreciate that. The defensive back situation, it rotates from week to week. Not really sure what to make of it, and that should tell you all you need to know really about the defensive back situation here for Carolina for fantasy. We got Bob Harris in the chat. Bob Harris, good morning, sir. How are you today? We got Steve Huntgarter in the chat. Good morning. Good morning to you, Steve. Hope you're having a good one. And with that, let's go to our next game. Let's go to this one, which should be the most awesome game, most exciting game of the day. And in case you don't know, folks, I am using a lot of sarcasm here, talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Cleveland Browns, 33 over under, -2.5. Injuries. This one for an IDP perspective, and I guess I'll start with this first, and then we'll jump into offense because it won't take me long. Minkah Fitzpatrick, who's been dealing with a hamstring injury, is out again this week. And the defensive back who I was super high on going into this week, I put him in the waiver article. I put him in the start and sit article. I've been singing his praises on Shoot the Gap, our IDP podcast, which you can catch us recording live at 10 p.m. Eastern on Wednesdays. Keanu Neal, he's out this week, has a rib injury. So I couldn't even begin to tell you who's insert, random name who's taking over at safety. What does that mean? That means that's somebody you kind of want to avoid for your IDP defensive back spots. For Pittsburgh, it's really the Landon Roberts linebacking core show. Now, there has been reports that Michael Walker could come in this week and play alongside of Landon Roberts, who, if that's the case, we could see Roberts being taken off the field on passing down situations, which could kind of give Roberts' fantasy value a hit there. But I still think there's going to be enough volume in this game because no Deshaun Watson out for the year. We're expecting Cleveland to run the ball a lot, which is great for, run stopping, tackling linebackers, obviously. And of course, you're starting TJ Watt. For Cleveland on the opposite side, Myles Garrett, obvious start. That Pittsburgh offensive line couldn't stop anything. And Grant Delpit at defensive back. All right, here we go. See, IDP for this game, quick, easy. There you go. Let's get to the offensive side of the ball, and let's talk about this Cleveland Browns offense. Man, Jerome Ford, right? Jerome Ford. What are we doing at wide receiver here? This is an interesting situation. I will say this before we go any further. If you have a lot of slot wide receivers on your roster, this could be a huge week for you, just because I'm looking at the top 22 defenses allowing points to the slot wide receiver this week, and there are a lot of good ones. For example, when looking at snaps for the past 3 weeks for the Cleveland Browns, there is one name that has basically been jumping out in my mind, aside from Amari Cooper, and that's Cedric Tillman, who's playing majority of his snaps at slot. Pittsburgh is allowing the 4th most fantasy points per game to the slot wide receiver with 16.5. That is a very deep pull. That is a very deep play. But it's somebody that you may want to pay attention to, especially if you're doing DFS lineups or whatnot, as far as getting a low cost player to build up your rosters and other levels. But aside from that, Jerome Ford, and one of these wide receivers, Amari Cooper and Cedric Tillman for a deep play, and David Njoku at tight end, I can't think of anybody. And even then, just because we don't know what to expect about this quarterback situation, this guy, he played one game and he got destroyed by the Ravens. So I don't know what to expect. Colby, do you have any idea what to tell these people what to expect here for the Cleveland Browns offense?
A lot of runs. I think that's the real simple answer. I mean, DTR is going to run the ball. Jerome Ford's going to get his. Kareem Hunt's had double-digit carries the last 5 weeks. He's also found the end zone in each of those. I don't foresee him losing that trend there. It's just this game. I mean, it's just going to suck. I have no other words to describe it. If I have Deontay Johnson, I'm starting him. If I have, in deeper leagues, if I have Elijah Moore, I'm reluctantly starting him. I'm not paying. I don't think in any DFS build that I have done this week, I don't think I have any part of this game. Now, I didn't even take the defenses in either of this. This game's going to stink. High school football games probably have higher over-unders on the side betting markets than this game. It's going to be so bad. What's the old saying? It's a bad day fishing is still better than a good day at work or something like that. This is this. It's honestly, I'd rather have no football than watch this game. I'll be watching a very exciting game, that's for sure, but it will not be this one. It will not be this one. This game's going to stink.
Kyle, yeah, save this. Save this game. Give us some redeeming qualities here, whether it's on Cleveland side or Pittsburgh side or.
Good luck.
No, the only thing I would push back on is I would start both defenses in fantasy. Jerome Ford's startable too. He had 107 yards against Baltimore last week. That's about it though. I mean, everything else I agree with. The over-under is very low at 33, lowest on the slate. It is going to be an ugly game, but because of that, I would start both defenses.
Got a question here in the chat. Start one. CJ Stroud, Kyler Murray, or Trevor Lawrence this week? Kyle, let's start with you with this one.
CJ Stroud. Yeah.
I don't even need to ask Colby because, CJ Stroud. There we go.
Yeah. See, if that's seasonal, it's Stroud. In DFS, I can understand going to Kyler because, on DraftKings, I believe he's $900 cheaper, I think, if I remember off the top of my head correctly. So, DFS, I can understand some of the savings there. But if we're just going seasonal, it's the future offensive rookie of the year.
Colby, I may be wearing a Titan shirt, but I am a realist.
Hey,
I will back up CJ Stroud. He is having a hell of a year.
As will I blindly. So,
that's all nice and dandy, but it's the Commanders quarterback who's number 1 in the league in passing yards, I believe, heading into week 11. Just hint, hint, nudge, nudge. That's all I can really brag about. So I'll just go with that. Anyhow, Dylan's here in the YouTube chat, has a few start and sit questions, full PPR. Start one, Hollywood Brown or Trey McBride. Let's go with that one first. Colby, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I'm going Trey McBride. Houston stinks against tight ends. Take the tight ends against Houston. I believe it's the second most fantasy points allowed per game to this season, and they've actually allowed also the second most, tied for the second most receptions, only one behind Chicago there. They've been so bad against the tight end. No Jimmy Ward, so even if he was playing, they still can't cover tight ends anyway. So I am actually going to go Trey McBride.
All right, Kyle, this next one's for you. Start one running back, a one flex. James Conner, Devon Achane, Jalen Waddle.
I'm going to go with Achane and Waddle here. I'm a little optimistically nervous, I guess, on Achane because he does have that coming back from the IR. I don't know if McDaniel is going to secretly kind of hold him out a little bit, limit him. But I'm going to roll the dice on Achane. I mean, he has been fantastic. And Waddle is Jalen Waddle. Where you drafted him, you have to start him. So Achane and Waddle.
All right, and then let's go here with the last question. One quarterback, one running back, one flex. Quarterback, Stroud or Fields? I say Stroud. We make it a clean sweep. We were talking about CJ Stroud so far this morning. In terms of one running back, whether it's James Conner, Jerome Ford, or Devin Singletary, who, when given a lot of opportunity last week, turned 20 attempts for 150 yards and a touchdown, or 30 attempts, actually, I believe it was. So, Colby, who would you pick here, Conner, Ford, or Singletary?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, if you kind of just blindly look at the numbers, you'll lean Conner. But actually, the last 4 weeks, Houston's allowing under 3 yards per carry to running back. So their run defense has been much, much, much improved. So looking at it here, obviously Stroud, I'm going Singletary. Arizona's not good against running backs, and he has no competition for touches again. So it could be another 20-plus carry day, maybe even 25-plus. And then I will go Jalen Waddle. So Stroud, Singletary, Waddle.
Yep, that's where I'm rolling with. Kyle, what about you?
Yeah, same.
All right. And then Dylan also has a comment here. We still like my Ravens to contend this year without Andrews. I'm a Ravens fan, born in blood, first year. I've seen us have a solid wide receiver core, a solid backup tight end, so it's time to step up. Health is important too. To answer your question, do you still like your Ravens to contend? I think the defense can keep you in games. I think the offensive weaponry they have there is still top notch. They did a great job. Zay Flowers, Bateman, Zay Flowers, excuse me. Even Beckham has been playing well in recent weeks, although his shoulder got banged up on Thursday Night Football. You have the good running back situation here. You have Lamar Jackson. I still think so. I just, you take away one weapon, but they did a good job replenishing on the other end. So as dramatic as it might be, or traumatic rather, I should say, for your fantasy teams, as for like a real NFL situation, I don't know. I guess I'm not as scared off by this injury as maybe others are. Colby, do you agree or disagree, or what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like they have a zero behind him. Like Isaiah Likely's fine. He's a very good tight end. You'll be okay. You are worse without Mark Andrews. No one's going to argue that. I still think they contend. I still think it's a very good team. I will be very interested to see how Todd Monken does play calling moving forward. Does he basically just take Likely, stick him in as Andrews, and they carry on as if nothing happened? Or do they, dare I say, go run heavier and just start running it more and kind of default to what happened in the past couple of years with that offense? So I still think you're fine, but just keep in mind right now, if the season were to end today, you know who they get in the first round of playoffs. They would get Houston. So I'd be a little bit worried there, but I'm just kidding. But yeah, I think you're still fine. You're still a very good team. I wouldn't be all that worried. You are worse off without him, yes, but you are not done by any means.
Oh, that's a lie. They should be worried if they're facing Houston.
Yeah, they're screwed, but I'm trying to be somewhat impartial here and say they're fine. But yeah, I mean, you're one and done now, especially if you're the 2 and you get Houston as the 7.
Yeah, so you're in contention for a playoff spot, sure, but as far as getting to the Super Bowl, that could be a little bit tricky.
I would be rooting for Houston to win that division and get Jacksonville instead, but hey, what do I know?
Kyle, why don't you take this one? We got a question here. Rachaad White, Najee Harris, Jerome Ford, or Khalil Herbert returning this week as an RB2. He says also rank them in case he needs a flex also.
All right. Rachaad White has a tough matchup against the 49ers. Najee Harris, 50-50 timeshare, just lost a job to Jalen Warren. I'm going to go Ford here, number 1. Khalil Herbert coming back from the injury, if I had to rank them. I guess I would go Ford, Harris, White, Herbert, because I don't know what's going to happen there with Herbert coming back, and that's already a timeshare as well in Chicago. So that's how I would rank it.
Yeah, I agree. I think you can make the case for flip-flopping Harrison Ford, not Harrison, Najee Harris and Jerome Ford. Tyler Heil on the Dynasty 365 show last week, we were talking about Rachaad White, and just you look at it, his yards per game average is not impressive. As a pure just running the ball running back, the average is just not there. It's been sub 3 yards per carry for most of the season. His bread and butter is in the receiving game,
which should be in his favor with game script, so he can catch the ball out of the backfield. So that could be in his favor.
So, yeah. But Khalil Herbert is definitely the person I would put last here. Colby, let me get you to answer this guy. Stephen Drake, first of all, thank you very much for donating here at Fantasy and Frames. Much appreciated. So he played Andrews, needs 5 of the following players in half PPR. He needs Devonta. So his options are Devonta Adams, Nico, Dell, Henderson, Achan, McBride, and Amari. He's struggling with Henderson's upside here. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's Devontae, Nico, Tank, Achan, and McBride. I think that one's pretty easy. That's what I would go with. I don't, outside of the Rams passing attack, I don't really want anything there. I'm not going to pick the Henderson and Freeman game. It's not worth it. And I'm out on Amari Cooper with DTR. So Adams, Nico, Dell, Achan, and McBride.
That's what I had as well in my head.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Again, much appreciated. Come back anytime. We'll answer any of your questions that you have. Another comment here from Chasing Ships. I subscribed the other day and I've loved all your content. Thank you so much for all your help with this 9-1. All right. Dotson, Wandale, or Shakir for flex full PPR. For me, and I'm not trying to be biased here, it's Jahan Dotson. The Giants are allowing 20.5 fantasy points per game to the slot wide receiver, which has been Jahan Dotson for the Washington Commanders. They are the third most allowed in that particular statistic. Wandale Robinson, the Commanders are allowing 11.6 to the slot position. So we're just talking about points here, and that's kind of where I'm going here. Sam Howell's passing the ball a lot. The volume is going to be there a lot with no Antonio Gibson this week, who's been doing a lot of work out of the receiving out of the backfield as a receiver. Again, targets just have to keep going more wide receivers, and so I think that's going to help out Jahan Dotson, especially with the matchup at slot. Kyle, what are your thoughts here?
No, I totally agree. You don't know what you're going to get out of Wandale or Shakir. I mean, it's a roll of the dice with those two. Dotson's the more consistent play, so I'll go with Dotson.
And then we have David Ibrahim on the West Coast jumping in here saying, Jorge, please share the photo I sent you of Colby's doppelganger. I don't think I have that. I don't think you sent that to me. If so, text it to me and I'll laugh. And if I like it enough, I'll put it on the show just to get a rise out of the Colby here.
What is David doing up right now?
So he has actually been up on our show a few weeks. So he's answer your question. He should be sleeping. Yes. This here I love here from Chasing Ships, who's clearly watched on our YouTube or TikTok channel. Kyle, you did a start and sit video for us over on our TikTok channel yesterday that we posted. And in this start and sit video, you stated,
Colby, you're going to raise your eyebrows here.
And it deals with the Bills versus the Jets, that if Josh Allen scores more than 20 fantasy points today, which Kyle does not believe he will, that he will take a pie in the face this time next week on the show.
That's right. That's right. I like the Jets defense. They've the QB1 interceptions is Josh Allen. The Jets are 9th in the league with 9 interceptions. We saw what he did against the Jets in opening night, where he threw 3 picks to Jordan Whitehead. The Kansas City Chiefs in that game with the Bills, he threw 203 yards with 2 picks. And if you want something more recent, week 9 against the Chargers, he threw 136 yards, Josh Allen did. So the Jets have been a great defense all season. I don't see a bounce back in Josh Allen. He's a great, terrific quarterback. I mean, come on, he's QB3. But I just think he's going to have another rough go today. And I got the pie bet on the line, and I'm buying the pies if it happens.
So Colby, you'll have an appreciation for this, or maybe you won't. The doppelganger that David Ibrahim is referring to is Vanilla Ice. So there you go. That's the person he was talking about. Yeah, I know. I find it strange too. I'm not seeing it, but
hey, if he sees it, that's what matters. Usually the one my wife always says it's Trace McSorley, and that one I see a little bit more. But
state quarterback.
Yep. It is. Hey, if David sees it, I trust his opinion, and I trust what he says, so I will not disagree with him. So let me throw this out there too with Josh Allen. I actually like the under on 20 as well. So I don't think I'm in the minority there either. I think most should be on the under for him. Dating back to last year, his rushing saved him against the Jets last year. That was where all of his fantasy points came from. In his last 3 games against the Jets, so 2 last year and 1 this year, 2 touchdown passes, 5 interceptions. Take away the rushing numbers, he hasn't been there, throwing for 205, 147, and 236 in those 3 games. So Jets have his number. I kind of like it to happen again.
All right. Let's go on to our next game here. We got the Bears. We got the Lions. As of 6:45 this morning, injuries currently are designated as Tremaine Edmonds as questionable, Jack Sanborn is questionable, and Deonta Foreman as questionable. And as we're talking about this game, we will of course go back and double check these just to make sure nothing has been changed or updated. Surprise, surprise, Khalil Herbert and Justin Fields are back this week. What does this do for the likes of DJ Moore? Are we super excited to get DJ Moore into our lineups? I know we've had him in our lineups, but being super excited is a different thing. Kyle, what are your thoughts?
Well, Jorge, I've been talking up DJ Moore since the summer, and but coming in now, week 11, with Justin Fields coming back with the injury, you're still starting DJ Moore, but I'm a little bit, I guess, hesitant, worried, because DJ Moore can have that 4 for 40 game, but then of course he'll have that 49-point fantasy game where he just blew the doors off with 3 touchdowns. I don't know if that's going to happen this week, but he's in a good position against the Lions. I mean, this has the makings of a shootout if Justin Fields can keep up with Jared Goff. So you're starting DJ Moore as a wide receiver too, but you're probably tempering a little bit of expectations there.
Colby, should anybody be starting Khalil Herbert in their flex, his first game back, for the Chicago Bears this week?
Deeper leagues, you may have to. I know both Kings Classic leagues I have to because I have no other options. So, and that's, again, 2 running back, 3 flex, 14 team. I'm starting him and actually quite happy to be honest, because back when he was healthy, he was the guy. Now we'll have to see, because I think they've only had 1, maybe 2 games this year where they had all 3 of their main running backs active, because they basically just started making Foreman as far as I know, he was healthy. So a healthy and active. So we'll kind of have to see how it plays out after Foreman's been rumbling the last couple weeks. So in deeper leagues, yeah, I would throw him out there, but just temper your expectations, because first game back from injury, and it's really hard to run on Detroit. So I actually kind of like the Chicago passing game a good bit. And remember, last time we saw DJ Moore with Justin Fields, 2 bonkers weeks. So have to see if he can do it again.
I'm glad you reserved yourself there and didn't say who those bonkers weeks were against, or at least one of them were against. So thank you for your modesty there, the Commanders. Anywho, again, going back to this notion of slot wide receiver matchups this week, you look at the Detroit Lions, they're allowing the 5th most points to the slot wide receiver. So even Darnell Mooney could have some involvement in this matchup this week. So again, in deep leagues, he could be somebody that you could insert there, just given the track record there, and especially in DFS lineups. Also, for the IDP side for the Chicago Bears, look, I read about this week, and he's a sit of mine. Montez Sweat, it's great when you're playing with a lot of other awesome defensive linemen on your team, especially when you have a great defensive edge rusher on the opposite side of the defensive line, like a Chase Young, that can draw away attention from other offensive linemen, thus freeing you up for one-on-one matchups to get past your one-on-one blocks and get to the quarterback and make quarterback hits and get sacks and whatnot. It's another thing when you go and get traded to the Chicago Bears, where your only other person that you can really rely on to take the pressure off of you is Yannick Ngakoue, who, hey, go Terps. I followed his career ever since he went to Maryland. He's not that somebody who's going to scare offensive linemen like, oh, we better double team Yannick Ngakoue and give Montez Sweat the one-on-one matchup. And we saw what happened last week versus the Carolina Panthers offensive line. Versus the Carolina Panthers offensive line, Montez Sweat could only get 3 quarterback hits, which is nothing. You're hoping for the sack upside there. Just wasn't getting it there. In terms of plays this week, I was really hoping Jack Sanborn would be healthy, but it sounds like, from what I'm hearing, that Tremaine Edmonds could have a shot to play it. If he does have a shot to play, the Detroit Lions have been very friendly to allowing tackles to the linebacker position. So both him and TJ Edwards could eat this week a lot. So that's something you definitely want to pay attention to for the Chicago Bears. On the flip side, the Detroit Lions, man, David Montgomery, welcome back. I mean, I was not expecting him to rip off that 75-yard touchdown run last week versus the Chargers. We finally have been seeing we finally saw last week the Lions offense just be fully utilized the way I think they were intending them to be at this point of the season. Jahmyr Gibbs is getting his work. David Montgomery is getting his work. We go to slot wide receiver matchups. Amon-Ra St. Brown has a great matchup this week. Even Khalif Raymond has opportunity there, being somebody who plays the second most slot snaps to the wide receiver at the wide receiver position for the Detroit Lions. Yeah, I really don't know where you can go wrong here. Even Jared Goff as your quarterback this week, it's going to be a show. I think you're going to see another show from all these skill players in the quarterback position here for the Detroit Lions. So I would start, the Lions that you do have. Is there anybody here for Detroit, maybe Colby, that people should be fading a little bit, or is it no wheels up on everybody?
I think you're good with everybody. I would, in that backfield, I prefer Gibbs to Montgomery because, believe it or not, the Bears have allowed more receiving yards to running backs than rushing yards. And Montgomery's been pretty much a non-factor in the receiving game, aside from that one game against, I believe it was Carolina, when he had like 5 or 6 targets. So Gibbs is my preferred running back in Detroit. But outside of that, if you have Lions, go ahead and start them. They could put up 40 for the second week in a row, and I wouldn't be surprised.
Nice. Going to the IDP side of the ball here for the Detroit Lions. Look, it starts up front with Aiden Hutchinson. In week 10, he led all defensive linemen with an 82% defensive snap share. His win rate and pressure rates have been amazing this season. Again, last week had a 22.6% win rate. What does that mean? When he's taking on one-on-one blocks, he basically gets past his offensive lineman very efficiently, very quickly. And even when he's taking on multiple blocks, this guy can still get around them and get to the quarterback and make plays. His pressure rate is elite at 19.4%. That's what you like to see. At the linebacker situation, it's really Alex Anzalone that you can be very comfortable with. He had a tackle efficiency rate of 12.5% last week with 9 tackles for PFF. Look, the Detroit Lions, they drafted Jack Campbell early this year in the draft, and everybody was like, oh, Jack Campbell's going to be the LB2 for the Lions. It's going to be great. It's going to be fantastic. He was such a great player at Iowa. He's just going to rack up the tackles. And you know what? One day he might. But not when you have a 54.2% total defensive snap share. It's clearly a rotation between Campbell and Derek Barnes at the linebacking position. So the only one that you can confidently start is Alex Anzalone. And then when you look at, the defensive back situation, you're really looking at the 2 safeties, Kirby Joseph and Tracy Walker, both of which are basically mirror images of one another. And the thing you like to look for here at the box snap percentage is seeing which defensive backs are playing closer to the line of scrimmage, a la playing the de facto, third linebacker role there. That concerns me a little bit, just because they kind of eat into each other's workload. So I don't know if I'd feel comfortable starting either Joseph or Walker. If I had to pick one, I would probably pick Walker, just because we have seen Kirby Joseph play a little bit more deep safety, further away from the box than we had Tracy Walker, especially last week in week 10. So that is where I would that's what I would recommend there. Let's see here. We have another comment from David Ibrahim. Montgomery is super inefficient. If you take away a 70-yard touchdown, he rushed 11 times for 41 yards, giving him an average of 2.6 yards per. You know what, David? It's almost like you should be joining us on the show. And it's almost like I also just emailed you the link to join us on the show, which hopefully you'll be able to join us in a little bit. Then, of course, he says Laporta Potty is due for a huge bet. Really? Laporta Party? That's what we're rolling with? That's kind of disrespectful, but okay, whatever. Anyhow, let's move on to the next game. Speaking of the aforementioned Chargers, they're going to Green Bay, 44 over under, -3. Rudy Ford, safety, doubtful. Quay Walker, looks like he's going to play this week. Christian Watson questionable, Gerald Everett doubtful. So what does that mean? We saw Jonathan Owens, the free agent acquisition from the Houston Texans last year, get signed. But I was expecting him to come into the season, assume the starting role, win that role in training camp. It was really Rudy Ford and Darnell Savage who took the 2 starting safety spots. But then we saw Savage go down to an injury. We saw Rudy Ford go down to injury. And we've seen Jonathan Owens step in to that box safety role and have success for fantasy purposes. I believe he was a top 20 defensive back in Fantasy Pros IDP scoring just a couple weeks ago. Rudy Ford comes back last week, yet we still saw a similar utilization closer to the line of scrimmage, again, going back to those box snap percentages between Ford and Owens. But again, with Ford being doubtful for this game, I still think, now I think that Owens becomes a viable start here for your IDP teams at defensive back. Quay Walker coming back. That means, Trent McDuffie, thank you very much for Isaiah McDuffie, excuse me. He'd been playing very well for the Green Bay Packers at linebacker. But it's just a matter of snaps. They only really deploy 2 linebackers at one time, so not really going to get anything out of that there. Christian Watson, I'll get to in a second. Gerald Everett, doubtful. Donald Parham, I really like Donald Parham. I think he just gets a little bit more consistency, more playing time, and Gerald Everett just happened to not be there. I think Parham could be a really consistent asset in the wasteland that is the tight end position. Colby, tell me if you are familiar with this name, Dontavion Wicks.
Yeah, he plays more than I would like him to, because I would like Jaden Reed to be on the field more than he is. So, yeah, I'm very familiar with that name. It may not be for all positive reasons, but yeah, familiar with it.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that. So one of the things I was noticing when I was looking at the past 3 weeks in terms of playing position and snap share and whatnot is, Wicks is highly targeted. He's in a double digit in targets the past 3 weeks. He's been playing mostly outside, which, helps with, Jaden Reed playing in the slot, which is fantastic. You look at, several performance metrics. Wicks has actually been doing very well. The only problem is just the opportunity, the amount of time he's on the field. He could be somebody that, again, in DFS, circles this week, especially with Christian Watson not playing as well lately. And we've been seeing, whether it's due to health or performance or a combination of both, Wicks kind of takes some of those snaps away from Christian Watson. And so when you look at the yards per game, Wicks actually has, I believe, the most yards per game the past 3 weeks out of all the Green Bay Packers wide receivers. So definitely somebody who's a sneaky play this week, more so in a super deep league, like in the Kings Classic. I'm starting him this week because I think he's due for a good matchup. Plays really well against zone. The Chargers, I think they run the zone defense the 6th most or the 9th most in the league. So kind of high on him this week. But, you said the name. It's Jaden Reed. I think he is, quite frankly, the best wide receiver on the Green Bay Packers, has been playing like it in recent weeks. Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, that experiment went, by the wayside when Aaron Rodgers left town, which is kind of harsh to say, but it's been Reed that's really been, coming through. Luke Musgrave is another one, tight end. He's also been playing very well. But Kyle, I want to get to you about this Aaron Jones, AJ Dillon situation. This was supposed to be the tandem. Like, no more Aaron Rodgers. We got Jordan Love. Got to take some pressure off Jordan Love. And these guys are supposed to be running wild, and it just has not been happening, whether it's due to injury or circumstance or just flat out inefficiency. What are we doing with either of these running backs this week?
Yeah, and I was looking at Fantasy Pros, and they have Aaron Jones as RB9 for this week, which seems very aggressive. I mean, RB9 is like a slam dunk, must start, and I don't see it. The strength of the Chargers defense is run D. Their pass D is what's bad. And game script should have the Packers trailing in this one, not leading. So having Aaron Jones as an RB9 seems pretty overly aggressive for a guy who's disappointed fantasy managers all year. I mean, besides his hamstring injuries, he's missed 4 or 5 games. He hasn't really done anything in the games he's played in. He hasn't even cracked 100 yards, excuse me. I don't know why they have Aaron Jones ranked so high. If you have him, maybe you have to start him, but I'm not optimistic about it.
Got a question here from Chasing Ships again. Colby, why don't you take this one? Do you trust Jordan Love versus the Los Angeles Chargers this week?
I will start him, but I will not watch the game. He is one. I'm very anti box score watching for players in fantasy. Like, context is everything. I fully support box score watching with Jordan Love. Watching the games is brutal. It seems like he only plays for the fourth quarter. That's when he gets pretty much all of his fantasy points, whether they're in it or not. You can start him because the Chargers defense is just so darn bad. And like, I do like Aaron Jones this week for his player prop for receiving yards. I'm heavily invested in that one. So I think Love can get a little bit done through the air just because Chargers are allowing the second most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. But if you start him, just don't watch the game. I know that's not really great advice, but I would not watch it. He is a very tough watch.
That is for darn sure.
Maybe tune in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, tune in then.
You know what? Yeah. I'm trying to find some silver lining for Jordan Love. The Chargers do allow the second most fantasy points to the quarterback position, but you have to look at the quarterbacks they've been facing, and Jordan Love is not up to that status yet in his career. Switching to IDP for the Chargers, look, you're rolling with Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. Bosa, he's one of those players who Nate Markham here at Fantasy and Frames over the summer, especially at the Fantasy Football Expo on our IDP panel. He was mentioning Joey Bosa as being one of those players that people will probably pay up too much for early on in drafts and not get a lot of upside in return. And the rationale for that is just his consistency in terms of injuries and performance. It's just been over the past couple of years kind of, off. But ever since he's come back from his injury this year, Bosa has been playing really well. Again, a 19.2% win rate. Khalil Mack, again, he's been playing very well, but you have to be wary of some of his numbers. What did he have? 7 sacks in one game against the Raiders, I think, a few weeks ago, which has definitely inflated a lot of his metrics this year. So therefore, I would rank Bosa ahead of Khalil Mack. When you get to the linebacking situation, Eric Hendricks and Kenneth Murray are the two top linebackers there that are getting the most snaps here for the Chargers. I would roll with Kendricks just because we're seeing his tackle efficiency being a little bit more, effective. His tackle efficiency is leading to him being a little bit more effective there in that department. And of course, safety, you're starting Derwin James Jr. That is an obvious smash start from week to week at defensive back. Got a question here from Jason. How do you feel about Herbert today? It seems for some reason the Chargers are trying hard to get Quentin Johnston involved. I like Quentin Johnston this week. I understand the matchup is going to be tough. Jair Alexander may be returning there for the Green Bay Packers, which makes me think he's going to be potentially seeing a lot of Keenan Allen, because I do believe that Jair Alexander does shadow quite a bit. But again, it's his first game back from injury. How effective he's going to be, how much is he going to be on the field? That's another story. But look, we're seeing Herbert realize that you can't always throw to Keenan Allen, even though he does. But he's looking for that target. He's looking for that consistent, reliable target. Jalen Guyton, as well as Quentin Johnston, I think for DFS plays could be sneaky ones. They're relatively inexpensive, under 4,500 on DraftKings, both of them. I don't know. How do I feel about Herbert today? I think this should be, in theory, a good matchup here for Justin Herbert in the receiving weapons for this team. But we've seen him put up some duds lately for his standards. So, Colby, let me ask you, what are your thoughts on Justin Herbert today?
Yeah, I'm starting him. I like Green Bay to score some points. So Chargers are going to have to score because Chargers can't stop anything or anyone, really. So I think Green Bay will score. I like Justin Herbert a good bit. They are trying to get Quentin Johnston involved. And honestly, today, they're going to need him. Like, they're banged up. They're going to need someone else opposite of Keenan Allen. And God forbid, I know I saw the report from Schefter that Keenan Allen is supposedly going to play without restriction, which is good. But you could make the argument that the bigger cause for concern is not Allen starting the game. It's going to be Allen finishing the game. One wrong fall. I do not want it to happen because I'm invested into Keenan Allen this week as well. So I don't want it to happen, but that's all I'm saying. Something could go wrong there. Next thing you know, Quentin goes from wide receiver 2 question mark to he's going to be leaned on heavily. So I like Herbert, and I think Quentin Johnston's going to be a fine play. I expect DFS ownership to be kind of higher than what some may think with Quentin Johnston this week.
All right, let's go to the game of the week. It seems, and Colby, you'll like this. Arizona at Houston, 48 over under -5.5. Injuries of note: Noah Brown out, Will Anderson questionable, Henry To'oTo'o linebacker out, Damian Pierce out. Man, Noah Brown being out, I think. And let me explain what I mean by that. It is hard to ignore. In fact, it's impossible to ignore what Noah Brown has done the past couple weeks in replacement for either Nico Collins or Tank Dell. He just, the 22.8 average during that time span has been ridiculous. And a lot of people were probably going to roll into today's matchup and say, oh, Noah Brown, he's on a hot streak. He's doing this and that. This, wheels up Texans, all wide receivers. This week could have been a tough one. The Cardinals are only allowing 8.6 points per game on the season to the slot wide receiver position. So Noah Brown could have had definitely a tougher matchup this week. And that could have put a lot of fantasy managers, especially those who, let's face it, if you're still using a waiver system, you probably grab, Noah Brown off waivers being one of the teams that's underperforming, trying to get into the playoffs. And you could have hinged all your hopes onto Noah Brown and all of a sudden been disappointed. Yes, we'll never know. This week, that is. So I hate to say it's like a blessing he's not playing. No, it's not a blessing he's not playing. It's a blessing for your fantasy matchup that you didn't have to make that decision. Going forward, that's a different story. But for this week, I think the slot wide receiver for the Houston Texans is not going to be as productive. Robert Woods is coming back, but I can't recall whether Robert Woods is now playing slot or is he still playing outside. And that you have to pay attention to going forward this week. We mentioned Devin Singletary earlier. Look, I love Devin Singletary. He's been the most productive yards per carry when given a full set of opportunities. I agree with you, Colby. I think he's definitely a good start this week. When we look at the Arizona Cardinals, going again to the slot wide receiver position, the Texans are allowing the 7th most fantasy points to the slot, 14.9. So Rondale Moore could have a good week this week. This could be definitely, an interesting week. Everyone's talking Michael Wilson. Well, Colby, how about you talk about Michael Wilson for a second here? Is he somebody that, with the Kyler Murray connection last week, are we starting to see something develop here? Obviously Wilson didn't have the output that we were hoping for, but I believe there was like a touchdown that was called back or something along the lines in the red zone. What should fantasy managers think about Michael Wilson?
I liked him coming into the week. I do believe that he suffered a setback during the week, so I don't think he's playing. We'll have to wait till 11 or what, 11:30, whenever the inactives come out. We'll have to wait and see. From what I read, I don't think he is going to play, but he is one where if you have him moving forward, you have to be excited because if you got past the Josh Dobbs and Clayton Tune weeks, now you get him with Kyler Murray, he will be involved. So I think moving forward, you'll be fine with Michael Wilson. I wouldn't expect to have him this week. And against Houston, this week, I think we'll probably talk about him, but it's going to be the Trey McBride show. That's just how it's going to be this week because Houston can't stop the tight ends. Marquise Brown will be involved. Rondale Moore is interesting out of the slot. It's Houston's allowed some fantasy points to the slot. Tavier Thomas is like a PFF darling. I feel like no matter what he does, he's always graded high. No matter what he does, he's always graded high. So I don't know, he must have some friends in there, or he talked to Bobby Slowick and he's been talking to his old buddies at PFF about making sure his grade stays high. But yeah, I think this week it's going to be a lot of Trey McBride. They're going to try to run it. And then I think Kyler's legs are going to become a real problem and who can kind of separate on those second chance opportunities there. Rondale Moore is interesting. I think for me in that Arizona pecking order, Trey McBride is 1, Marquise Brown 2, Rondale Moore 3.
For those who didn't catch it, Kyle, your thoughts on James Conner coming back this week, or excuse me, playing second week coming back from injury. What are your thoughts on James Conner?
I feel like this game is going to be an air raid type game. I think it's just going to be a shootout on both sides, a lot of passing. But if you have James Conner, I think you're going to have to start him as an RB2. Maybe he punches one in from a goal line if you're lucky. But other than that, yeah, I see this being in kind of like that Chargers Lions game. This could be in both games in the 30s here. A lot of passing.
Nice. Going to the IDP side of the ball here, let's start with Arizona. Rookie BJ Ojulari just came out and had a fantastic game last week. He got majority of snaps right next to Zaven Collins, 52%. He was playing on all 3 downs. He had a win rate of 22.2% and a pressure rate of 33.3%. Here's the thing for defensive linemen. And so just to give you all some background, Gary Davenport, aka the godfather of IDP, has been petitioning this for years over on MFL, as well as other platforms that have taken note of this. The idea of what's called true position. So true position basically means if your job is to get to the quarterback and sack the quarterback, you should be categorized as a defensive lineman. So what does that mean for fantasy purposes? Well, now you have these linebackers or players that are designated as linebackers who are technically outside linebackers who rush the passers, rush the passer on a 3-4 defense. Those players should be called defensive linemen now. Okay, so keeping that into consideration, having a linebacker, who can rush the passer and get you tackle numbers is beneficial for fantasy. So therefore, when I'm looking at my defensive lineman spots, I want to get these edge rushers who not only give me the sack upside, who have been consistent getting to the quarterback, whether it's getting quarterback hits or getting sacks, but also have a decent tackle floor. And that's what Ojulari had last week with 8 total tackles on top of his 2 sack performance. I don't think it's a fluke. I think it's something to pay attention to. I don't know if I would start him this week. But I need to see a little bit more consistency, but he's definitely somebody I want to roster going forward. As far as the last few for Arizona, Kazir White, Jalen Thompson, Kazir White linebacker, Jalen Thompson, Buda Baker at safety. And joining us right now, we got Tyler Heil. How's it going, Tyler? You're muted.
Wasn't ready for that. I was muted, but it's going good.
Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. All right, let's see here. For Houston, no Henry To'oTo'o. That confuses me because Nate and I were pretty high on him for most of the season. Will Anderson is questionable heading into this game, but Jonathan Grenard is somebody who I recommend people start this week, who's just been playing lights out. Again, 18.8% win rate, 15.6% pressure rate in week 10, has been the DL6 in the past 3 weeks in fantasy points per game using IDP, Fantasy Pros IDP scoring. He's just been playing lights out. Super efficient. I think he should have a decent day this week. We look at the situation with To'oTo'o. Blake Cashman, he's linebacker for the Houston Texans. For weeks, he had been coming on a relief of injury due to Perriman being out and playing lights out. Then all of a sudden last week, he goes from playing, majority of snaps to playing only 54.7%, with Christian Harris rising from the abyss, getting 64.1% of snaps. But now Perriman is suspended. So now the question is, do you trust Blake Cashman to get the same number of snaps he was getting prior to Perriman going out due to injury? I think you do. That situation last week was just very fluky to me. That seems very fluky. And I think, quite frankly, that the Texans just don't really have any other option but to put Cashman in there next to Harris, especially with To'oTo'o out now in this game. At defensive back, you're starting Jalen Petrie. So he has not lived up to the DB1 overall billing that he had last year, but definitely somebody to pay attention to, especially in what should be a pass-heavy type of game. His coverage skills have come into play big time there. Let's see here. Chasing Ships says, good morning, Tyler. No pie today?
No pie today. I'm sorry. I've had my fill this week.
You know what the best part is, and we mentioned this on the show a little bit earlier, Tyler, is that your wife actually made a GIF of the actual pie in the face moment. JB Fantasy is here asking, where can I see all these pie bets? Are they on YouTube? Yes, they are on YouTube. I will make sure we get them all cut out into like a montage. It starts with me taking one back in 2020, actually 2 in the face. And then it went to a couple weeks ago. We actually had one of our content creators take a pie in the face, and he basically took a sweet potato pie, face planted, and then like pushed the tin into his face, where it made a mold of his face inside the pie tin. And then of course, Preston Evans is his name. And then of course, Tyler took 2 pies in the face from his kids and wife this past Wednesday. So we take our pie bets very seriously here at Fantasy and Frames, in case you didn't catch that a little bit earlier. And with that, let's get to our last game, or not last game, our next game. Tennessee at Jacksonville. Man, 40 over under. That seems very generous, unless Jacksonville's getting all the 40 points here. -6.5. Treylon Burks, doubtful with concussion. I don't know if he's listed as out as of right now. I don't even know where to start. I mean, the Jaguars have to be you would hope after the thrashing they took last week against the San Francisco 49ers, just as a person and as a team, it's kind of like, all right, we are about to victimize the next team that we face. Oh, Tennessee, you just happen to be in our way. And before I start slandering the Tennessee Titans, let's talk to the Tennessee Titans fan, Kyle Ziegler, and ask you, what are our thoughts for the offense for the Tennessee Titans this week?
Well, I feel like you could start Derrick Henry with full confidence. I mean, this is the first meeting between the 2 divisional rivals this year, but if you go back last year, Mike Vrabel and gang, I mean, they ran the ball a lot with Henry last year in both games, 47 times, in fact, 230 yards he had. I think that's going to be the same game plan today. I mean, you got Will Levis now back there. I can't imagine them wanting to drop him back 25, 30 times. That's not going to be a good answer. So I think their game plan is going to be run the football. That's what works for them, and control the clock and roll with Derrick Henry. That's about it, though. I mean, even DeAndre Hopkins, I wouldn't feel comfortable starting if I had no other options. I would as a wide receiver 2/3, but I wouldn't be very excited about starting Hopkins this week.
So let me interject a stat that I saw when I was looking at it. The Jags are not doing well against the running back position right now. They're allowing the 4th most points to the running back position over the last 4 weeks. The weird part about that is they haven't allowed a single rushing touchdown to the running back position over the last 4 weeks, yet they're still allowing the most points. Where are those coming from? They've allowed the most receptions and the 5th most receiving yards to the running back position. So that tells me not only can you start Derrick Henry, you can start Tyjae Spears, who's gotten 4, 6, and 5 targets over the last 3 weeks, respectively. So I feel really good about starting Spears.
Yeah, and you could start Spears because he actually plays a lot on 3rd down. They bring Henry out pretty much every 3rd and 4, 5, 6, 7 yards. He's coming out, and Tyjae Spears coming in, and they'll dump the ball off to him to pick up the 1st down.
Yeah. Spears outsnaps him every week. He doesn't outtouch him, but he outsnaps him.
Yeah. So that's a good point. You could start Spears.
For the Jaguars, look, there's, I did want to say a smash start, but it's somebody that I am starting, somebody that you probably will start in PPR leagues, but for the half and the non-PPR crowd, the Tennessee Titans are allowing the 17th most points per game to the slot wide receiver position. So it's not like we're talking, top 12, top 10, top 5, 17th. That's kind of, down the list there. So that being the case, Christian Kirk obviously should see the book of the targets here, just because, bust of the year candidate Calvin Ridley here, if for whatever reason just can't get on the same page with this offense. Colby, let's talk a little Calvin Ridley. I know you and we had talked about him a little bit earlier in the off season. Has he been the biggest disappointment for you in fantasy so far this year at the wide receiver position?
He would probably have to be up there. Yeah, it was a great start and then kind of just fell off the wagon a little bit there. So I actually like him a little bit today just because Titans have been pretty bad against perimeter receivers as well. Actually, probably just all receivers in general. Their secondary hasn't been all that good. So I like Ridley today a good bit. Some of his player props are pretty attractive. So I know I have a little bit of action in on him there. As much, and no offense, Kyle, as much as the Titans are probably the team I hate the most in the National Football League, as a Texan, I cannot stand the Titans. They are going to win this game today. So use that what you will. I do believe that they beat Jacksonville. So am I a little biased there because I want Houston to have a share of the AFC South title after this? Sure, I'm biased, but I mean, this game's being played in Jacksonville. Jacksonville's 2-3 at home this season. I know the Titans have sucked on the road, so it doesn't necessarily help too much there. But I think the Titans come away with a win here, whether it's Derrick Henry or maybe Will Levis shows out a little bit. But I think the over-under is a bit misleading. I could see this game getting above 40. I wouldn't be shocked. We've seen Levis put points up on the board. And who knows? Maybe, Jacksonville getting their teeth kicked in last week allows them to come out a little bit with a little bit of juice in this one. So I wouldn't be surprised to see this game go
over. Tyler, there was some reports going around, and you look at the stats and metrics of, Travis Etienne is kind of going to have a tough schedule going out the rest of the season, especially against teams versus running backs. Does that concern you at all? Or you firmly are like, Etienne has just been playing lights out. I have no reason to have any concern with him going forward.
I have no reason to have any real concern with him, but that's largely because of his workload. They're just feeding him the ball like crazy. He hasn't been overly efficient, but when you're getting 20-plus opportunities a game, then I've got to feel good about you regardless of what your schedule is. He's getting receptions. He's getting rushing opportunities. He's getting red zone rushing opportunities. He has the entire running back pie for what is a good offense. Like, we're talking bad about the Jaguars. They're still 6-3. Like, let's remember that. They're still good offense. They're still 6-3. They're still the favorite to win the AFC South. So I feel pretty confident with ETN moving forward. Cool. Hey, I'm just going by odds, man. All right.
I hear you.
Getting to the defensive side of the ball here. Let's start with Houston. Look, a lot of us were extremely disappointed, heading into the 2022 season when right before week 1, Harold Landry goes down to an injury for the year. He was coming off of the 21 season, just playing lights out, especially for IDP purposes. Flash forward to the beginning of this year, he gets a clear bill of health. He's like, okay, you can start. And he just hadn't been playing too well. And even when they started like pushing him more into more of a full-time role, he still hadn't been playing too well. Well, that has changed. And that has changed dramatically. You go back to last week, he played a majority of snaps at the edge position, had a win rate and pressure rate of 15%. It's over the past 3 weeks, he's averaged 12.3 points per game from a defensive lineman position. That is fantastic. This week, he's playing, he should be lining up against Anton Harrison, who is, quite frankly, he's also on the injury report this week. So we may even get the backup to the tackle here, who since week 8 has allowed 5 pressures, a quarterback hit, and a sack, and is one of Jacksonville's poorest rated offensive tackles. And so, and that's not saying a lot, So yeah, I'm looking for Landry to definitely clean up here. Azeez Al-Shaair, linebacker for the Titans again, somebody that you're definitely paying attention to and starting just because of the volume and the opportunity. Defensive backs, Terrell Edmonds, the newly acquired Edmonds from the Pittsburgh Steelers in the trade there for Kevin, not for Kevin Bart, why am I forgetting who? It doesn't matter. He played, 30% of the box snaps this year, or last week, but it's just not translating into a good situation. Before we get to the other side of the ball with the Jacksonville Jaguars IDP, let's answer this question here. Tyler, since you haven't answered one, why don't you take it from here?
All right. Who for my wide receiver 1, 2, and flex spot? He has Jacoby Myers, Romeo Doubs, Amari Cooper, Tyler Lockett, Curtis Samuel, James Conner, Kareem Hunt, A.J. Dillon. So A.J. Dillon is a no-go for me. I'm not feeling good about him. The Browns-Steelers game is a complete stay away for me. I'm not touching Kareem Hunt. Curtis Samuel, meh. James Conner, I would play. I honestly would probably play everyone in that Houston-Arizona game. They're the highest over-under of the week, and I can absolutely see why. Jacoby Myers has been okay. Amari Cooper, I don't know. Again, I'm probably going to stay away. Has anyone heard anything about Tyler Lockett? I know he's questionable. I think he's like a game time decision.
Mm.
So if Tyler Lockett's going, I'm playing him. But if not, we'll probably go James Conner, Romeo Doubs, and then maybe Jacoby Myers / Amari Cooper. What are you guys thinking about that?
Colby, what are your thoughts here?
I'm James Conner. I would love to get an update on Lockett beforehand, because if he plays, I'd probably be fine with him. And then when you look at it too, if you don't play Connor, you hold out for Lockett. Of course, Murphy's Law says we're not going to figure out till 3:00. So you're basically screwed after the 1:00 game. Where do you pivot to from there? I would take Connor over any of the other pivots. So I think I'd probably just play it safe and go Connor.
Yep. 100% agree. All right, Nathan, we did not forget about you here. Sorry for missing your questions a little bit earlier. Kyler Murray or Justin Herbert? I'm rolling with Murray. I love everything about this game against the Houston Texans. Kyle, what are your thoughts here?
Oh man, that's a nice problem to have. I probably would just go with Justin Herbert, to be honest. You know what you can get out of Herbert. He's been here. He's done this. Kyler Murray's coming back. Oh man, I know it's tough though, because Murray is a sexy play with those legs. No pun intended there. Yeah, I would still go with Justin Herbert there. Yeah.
Tiny little legs.
And
Colby, you got Herbert, or you'd probably go with Murray, right, in the shootout?
Yeah, I reluctantly agree with Jorge, and I'd go Kyler Murray.
All right, well, Colby, let's start with you now this time. Pick 2 in a non-PPR league: Jalen Waddle, Tank Dell, Rashee Rice.
Oh, man. I pretty much go Rashee Rice anytime he's mentioned, just because he is emerging as the wide receiver 1, not pass catcher 1 for Kansas City. But oh man, I just like Tank Dell too much this week. I mean, he's got like 25 targets over the last 2 weeks. I am going to go with Waddle and Dell, but I really like this trio overall.
Yeah, no, totally agree. I too I too have some thoughts on Rashee Rice. We'll wait till we get to that game a little bit later. But spoiler, I like him a lot this week. Terry over on Facebook, welcome Terry, needs 2 full PPR: James Cook, Raheem Mostert, Khalil Herbert. In that order, I would go. No, excuse me. I would go Mostert, Cook, then Herbert. Kyle.
Yeah, same. You definitely, if you need 2 out of those, it's definitely Mostert and Cook.
Tyler.
I'm not as confident with the James Cook thing. Raheem Mostert's still the top guy to play there. Khalil Herbert is coming off of IR, but I feel he is healthy. My main concern for James Cook is, 1, what is this offense going to look like this week? 2, he fumbled twice. Is Sean McDermott going to be, is he going to put him in his doghouse? Is he going to pull a Kyle Shanahan and just be petty and not play him? I think I would still end up probably playing James Cook, but I could entirely understand if you want to throw Khalil Herbert in there over James Cook, because quite frankly, we've been worried about Roshan Johnson stealing Khalil Herbert's job, and it's not Roshan anymore. It's Deontay Foreman. So I think Khalil Herbert is the unquestioned starter there.
Had the Buffalo Bills won last week, would we have called it the immaculate bounce for James Cook? No? Anyone? No, come on. That was funny. Whatever, guys. Whatever.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah. Wow, indeed. That not get a better reaction, especially for you people in the YouTube chat. Come on, that was gold. Stacey Perez here, who will be a little bit later with us. Screaming Dell into the void. Yes, we are. All right, let's get into the next matchup here. We got I still haven't gone over Jacksonville's IDP. Look, Josh Allen is, the real Josh Allen, as Nate Markham likes to say. He's definitely a start this week. The offensive tackles for the Tennessee Titans, no bueno. But even Trayvon Walker, I believe, has a good opportunity this week. The Titans at right tackle have basically had a rotation of right tackles over the past few weeks, 3 in particular, past 3 weeks. And during that time, this rotation at right tackle has allowed 17 pressures for 5 quarterback hits and 4 sacks. I think Walker takes advantage of that this week. Foyesade Aluakun is somebody, again, at linebacker who's been, for those who don't know, this guy's had like 140-plus tackles the past 3 years, back when he was an Atlanta Falcon, to now here with Jacksonville, just automatically a start at your linebacking position. For those who do know, I'm speaking into the void, speaking of which. And then we get to Rayshon Jenkins at safety, playing a majority of the snaps, 30.6% of the snaps in the box. That's exactly what you want there. Before we keep going, another comment here. Reports that Achane could have played through this injury. How much play does Mostert get with a chance return versus the Raiders? I didn't see that report that he could have played through this injury. Maybe that was early on during the process here. How much play does Mostert get, though? Kyle, I know you got to go really soon. Why don't you take this last one before you have to head out?
I think it's going to go back to what it was, 1A, 1B. I mean, I saw a beat reporter ask Mike McDaniel that question on how much we'll see out of Achane, and he jokingly said, you must have him on his fantasy team. I saw a video where he actually admitted that he did. But he said that he got the feel after watching practice that it's going to go back to that 1A, 1B type. So I would expect to see a lot of Achane right out of the gate.
All right. Kyle, thank you very much for your time this morning. Great work on the Start and Sit article. If you haven't yet checked it out, head over to fantasyandframes.com. If you want to see him talk about some of these players, head over to our TikTok channel and watch his short video there. Kyle, as always, great to see you, my friend.
Yes, thank you. See you guys. Good luck, everybody.
All right. Got a question here from Ball Glove Blueprint. PPR League, start 3. Colby, we'll start with you with this one. David Achane, Raheem Mostert, Brian Robinson Jr., and Breece Hall.
All right, so I'm definitely going Achane and Brian Robinson. And then do I go Mostert or Breece Hall? The last 3 games Achane and Mostert played, I do believe Achane outcarried him in all 3 of those games. Vegas sucks against the run. I just can't sit Breece, though. I think I'm going to go Achane, Brian Robinson, and Breece Hall.
All right. Using the logic there, I would go both running backs for the Dolphins, because we saw in those last few games that they both played together, both of them put up monster points there. And so it comes down to Brian Robinson or Breece Hall. I'm a Commanders fan. I don't know if the towel and the jersey in the background gave it away. Or you've been watching for a while. And let me just say, nothing is more consistent in being a Commanders fan than seeing one of your favorite players underperform, especially against a division rival like the New York Giants. So with that, I also will take Breece Hall in this. Tyler, what are your thoughts here?
My knee-jerk reaction to this, as soon as I saw it, was like, do you have to sit Breece Hall? He just has not been performing because opposing defenses are focusing on their run game. They know that's all they had was Zach Wilson under center. That said, I cannot bench 20-plus opportunities a week. He's getting the running game work. He's getting the passing game work. So I guess I am sitting Raheem Mostert.
All right. Well, I talked smacked about Brian Robinson Jr. and we still have IDP to go through. IDP Max Crosby, although he has been dealing with an injury this week. I believe it was a hamstring. I could be wrong, but either way, dealing with an injury. But he should be good to go this week. Robert Spillane at linebacker. Look, we saw the game-sealing interception last week. This guy is the only linebacker, though, for the Raiders, that you want to be starting. Divine Diablo has been a name thrown around IDP circles for years almost, and injuries have either derailed his long-term output or just, the lack of utilization, and that's what's hurting him this year. He's been basically rotating with who's who of defensive backs at the linebacker position. Excuse me, not defensive backs, other linebackers at the linebacker position. So you want no part of that. Trayvon Moehrig, a defensive back safety. I believe he's been a top 35 defensive back in Fantasy Pros IDP scoring for the past few weeks. Definitely somebody who I would be very comfortable inserting into my defensive back spot. And then going over to the Miami Dolphins, it's basically the Jalen Phillips, Bradley Chubb show for me. Both edge rushers there for the Miami Dolphins. In terms of the linebacking situation and the defensive back situation, not anybody that I think is a must start for you heading into this matchup. Let's go now to the game of the week, part 2, the Giants and the Commanders. Wow.
Gross.
Yeah.
This Giants team is unwatchable.
Unwatchable, you say? More so than the Browns and Steelers is going to be a little bit later?
I would rather watch Dorian Thompson-Robinson than Tommy DeVito. Like I can't do it.
All right, so let me ask you a question. Out of the 4 DSTs you had to play this week, Commanders, Giants, I believe this is the first DST question I've ever mentioned, let alone brought up on the show before. Giants, so enjoy this, folks, while it lasts, because you probably won't get another one. Giants, Commanders, Browns, Steelers. Which DST are you starting and why, if you had to? Colby, what are your thoughts here?
Commanders. They're in all my DFS lineups. They're the top play for me, and the Giants have given opposing DSTs the 4th most fantasy points over the last 4 weeks. Danny, aka Tommy DeVito, just isn't it under center. They don't trust him. He won't throw it. All Washington has to do is stop Saquon Barkley, and if they do that, double-digit fantasy points easy. So while I think Cleveland has more talent defensively, in this spot, I would rather attack Danny, aka Tommy DeVito. So I will go Commanders.
Tyler?
I am going to stick with the self-loathing Browns fan shtick and take Steelers. The Browns they have no names at tackle right now. They lost Jack Conklin, Jedrick Wills, and DeJuan Jones this year. TJ Watt and Cam Hayward are going to eat against this offensive line this week. TJ Watt might have a 3 or 4 sack game. That said, DTR, this is not an ideal kind of starting point for him, even though it's his second start against the Steelers defense with that defensive line. So there's going to be at least 1 interception, probably another turnover of some kind. So taking all that into consideration, I'm going to take the Steelers DST.
And before we get into the Commanders and Giants game, it'd be good if I actually talked about the offensive side of the ball for the Raiders and the Dolphins. I hear there are some really good players on this team. We talked about Achane. We talked about Mostert. We talked about Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, all of which you're starting. Tua, there you go for the Dolphins. For the Raiders, though, Josh Jacobs, man, he has been getting a lot of opportunity, but man, he fumbled the ball a lot last week, and that was very disconcerting to see. But he's been getting what I think 100-yard games the past couple weeks, total yards. Any concerns starting him this week against Miami there, Colby?
No, you can do it. Trust the volume, and just you're going to get what you're going to get. Hopefully they keep it close enough and they continue to hand it off to him. And if they fall behind, hopefully it's not far enough that they take him out of the game and kind of just save him. Let him get a couple of receptions. I think you're fine starting Josh Jacobs. Of course, there's guys that I like a lot more than him, but of course, there's guys I like a lot less than him. So I think you're fine playing Josh Jacobs and, just hope for the best against a tougher Miami defense.
Tyler, let's talk about the wide receivers here, the 2 primary ones here for the Las Vegas Raiders. Devontae Adams, the past 3 weeks, has been in half PPR scoring. Or excuse me, let me pull that back up here. Both Jacoby Myers and Devontae Adams have actually not been so hot. Devontae Adams has been the wide receiver 46, and then Jacoby Myers has been the wide receiver 48, both of which 6 points per game average. Is there another wide receiver that you're trusting? And if not, I might have a suggestion. But what are your thoughts here for the wide receiver position? And I know it's Devontae Adams, but come on.
Another wide receiver in this game?
Yeah.
I guess I'm confused with the question. There's only 2. I'm not touching Hunter Renfrow.
Okay, so thank you for bringing up the name Hunter Renfrow. It's almost like I set this one up. Like I wanted to talk about Hunter Renfrow. That's crazy. You look at this again. The theme of the morning here has been great slot wide receiver matchups in Week 11, and you look at Week 11. The Miami Dolphins, Jorge can talk, have been allowing the 9th most fantasy points per game to the slot wide receiver position with 14.8. And Hunter Renfrow. Every time I turn on a Raiders game, which is not often, but thank you, YouTube TV and, the Sunday thingy and Red Zone, because every time I see them get into, a good, down and distance, Hunter Renfrow has been targeted by Aiden O'Connell. Is this the week? I don't know. If it was a more experienced quarterback, I'd trust this a little bit more. But again, it is worth noting that the Dolphins do give up, like I said, the 9th most fantasy points per game to the slot wide receiver position. So again, this is not me saying you're starting Hunter Renfrow in your normal leagues, but for a DFS play, a very cheap one to help fill in, some salary cap in the other positions there on your roster. Just somebody to pay attention to. Going back to this game, Robert Swain has missed a ton of tackles. I trust the volume, JB_fantasy. He is getting the majority of snaps at the linebacker position, and no other linebacker for the Las Vegas Raiders is getting more. So definitely trust him this week. Plus, you get the big play opportunities that he's been producing out of all the Vegas linebackers. I'm definitely rolling with him. Richard in the chat here, standard league. Okay, Connor. Okay, Tyler, we'll go with you. Running back, James Conner or Jerome Ford?
James Conner. That one's not particularly close for me. The Browns backfield. Browns backfield's getting split work. We just talked about the game overall. It's the lowest over/under of the week. I mean, Jerome Ford has been pretty good on the ground, but he hasn't really been getting the high leverage touches. So I'm going to go ahead and trust James Conner. I think he's going to get almost all of that volume in a high scoring game.
Now, Colby, you mentioned this a little bit earlier. Now, the Texans are allowing on average this year only 3.5 yards per carry to running backs. Does that sway you off of this question in terms of James Conner versus Jerome Ford, or are you on board Conner as well?
I do like Jerome Ford, but it's James Conner. You can running backs still find the end zone. They can catch passes against Houston. James Conner can do that. And here's the thing. I mentioned it earlier. Kareem Hunt has double-digit carries in 5 straight weeks. Nobody else on Arizona other than Kyler Murray has a chance at double-digit carries. So Conner could get 20-plus carries in this game, and he has virtually no competition. So it's Conner for me.
There you go. And Chasing Ships just stated Tyler needs to remove his Jerome Ford jersey right now. JB_fantasy. Oh my God, just saw a report saying Aaron Rodgers is eyeing a Week 16 return. Should we be looking to pick him up now? Colby Conway, your thoughts?
Yeah. If your league has IR spots and you have one to use, go for it because it's not going to hurt you there. But, there's a lot with eyeing, for Thanksgiving. I'm not doing a turkey. Well, my wife and I are doing a turkey because we're going to the mountains for a little bit of a getaway, but I'm eyeing myself cooking a perfect 134-degree temperature steak. Chances of me doing that in a cast iron skillet on the oven, probably not, or on the oven, probably not very high. We can eye all that we want. I don't know if I see it. I am not a doctor, so I am not going to go into if he actually can do it or not. But if you have an open spot in your team now and you have open IR spots, sure. If you want to, because he's better on your bench than someone else's lineup, go for it. But I would not be hinging my fantasy playoffs on what feels like a 43-year-old quarterback with a half blown Achilles coming back. So if it doesn't hurt you to pick him up, sure, go for it. But I wouldn't expect anything with him.
This whole coming back in the fantasy playoffs for Aaron Rodgers is very familiar. In fact, if you go back to, I think it's 2017 or 2018, Rodgers was playing early in the season, the Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota. And I believe it was like a clavicle break or something where he was out for most of the year. and all the Packers needed to do is stay in contention. And that would be the rationale for Rodgers coming back on the field. They ended up somehow doing that with Brett Hundley as their quarterback for majority of the year. And Aaron Rodgers comes back, and he plays a decent game fantasy-wise versus the Carolina Panthers, which was like the deciding game whether or not he was going to help the team get into the playoffs. They ended up losing to the Carolina Panthers. It was the infamous Clay Matthews saying, "Oh, it's going to be a screen. It's going to be a screen," or something. And Cam Newton's like, "Yeah, well, watch this." And it was a screen, and they still scored the touchdown. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go Google it. It's a fun clip to watch there, folks. Anyhow, where I'm going with this is Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers had a decent offensive line in Green Bay back in 2018 that made him feel very confident on getting on the field. That is not the case in New York. And not to mention, I don't think they're going to stay in contention up until week 16 or 15 or whatever it's going to be. So I don't know. Again, if you have multiple IR spots, sure. But I wouldn't waste a spot if I just had one IR spot there for Aaron Rodgers. All right, let's go now. Now let's go to the game of the week, the Giants and the Commanders. No Antonio Gibson, which he had a turf toe injury pop up at the end of the week. And he's dealt with turf toe injuries before in Washington, which have curtailed his seasons, at least a season a couple of years ago. So no Antonio Gibson. Chris Rodriguez has been getting some opportunities here in recent weeks. I believe running back out of the University of Kentucky. Could spell Brian Robinson some in this game, although I still think this is going to be a heavily utilized running back in Brian Robinson. So I wouldn't be too concerned there about Rodriguez stealing too many touches away. But it really comes down to the wide receiver situation here for the Washington Commanders. Terry McLaurin, he can beat anybody in coverage. I truly believe he's one of the most unguardable wide receivers in the NFL. And no, that's not my bias talking. No, it's not because I have his jersey over my head right now. If you're watching on screen, it's because it's just fact, folks. So it's science. Ask Bill Nye the Science Guy. He'll tell you Terry McLaurin, unguardable. Is Bill Nye the Science Guy still a thing? Tyler, you have kids. Do they watch Bill Nye the Science Guy, or is that too young for them?
No, that's not a thing. It's
really?
It's Emily's Wonder Lab and things like that. Bill Nye the Science Guy is not a thing any longer. Sorry.
God, I'm getting
He's still alive.
Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that, but it's sad that he's not a thing anymore. Anyhow, too much time talking about Bill Nye the Science Guy on a fantasy football show. I digress. We talked about it a little bit earlier. Jahan Dotson going against the New York Giants. The Giants are allowing 20.5 points per game to the slot wide receiver position. Again, something to pay attention to if you're in DFS. Jamison Crowder is right behind Jahan Dotson in slot snap percentages the past few weeks. And you've been seeing him get some looks. I believe he even had a touchdown a couple weeks ago. So again, in a DFS play, if you want to go the cheaper route here, Jamison Crowder could be somebody that you slide in here and could free up your salary for other positions going forward. So just something to pay attention to there. Conversely, you look at the Washington Commanders, they're allowing the 15th most points to the slot wide receiver position. So Wan'Dale Robinson is somebody that immediately jumps to my mind. However, while Wan'Dale Robinson has played the majority of slot snaps for the New York Giants, when given the opportunity, Darius Slayton has also played some slot snaps, although he plays majority of the time on the outside. He has produced in the slot. So that's just like a food for thought type of thing. But if I had to play a slot wide receiver for the New York Giants, it would be Wan'Dale Robinson. What else do we have to say about this Commanders-Giants game, Colby, from an offensive side of the ball? We saw Sam Howell not have his greatest game against the Giants last time. Are we expecting something different this week?
I think it'll be a little bit better than last time, yeah. But for me, it's Brian Robinson, Terry McLaurin. I don't think I need to get too far down past that. And this game, I'm trying to pull this up quickly. I thought I would time this up much better. And of course, it just, the internet never quite does it the way you need to. But we're looking at a game with an over-under around 30. What was it, like 38?
It is 38, yes. Minus 9.
And we have one quarterback in that game with a over-under over on DraftKings of 165.5 passing yards. there's not much to say here. The Giants aren't doing anything. Washington's offense is going to flow through Brian Robinson, and Terry McLaurin and some of those other receivers will get involved. So I do think Sam Howell has a good day, but the fantasy star will be Brian Robinson.
Tyler, anything on the offensive side of the ball for other teams you want to talk about, or can we switch to IDP?
I appreciated all of your process and research for the Giants slot wide receivers. I'm not touching the Giants receivers. And Chris Rodriguez has actually not really played at all the past 3 weeks. I'm sure he will be active a bit more this week, but I wouldn't really mess with it. It's the Brian Robinson show, like Colby said.
Yeah. Switching, let's go to the IDP side. Let's talk about Washington first. I don't know if you've heard this, folks, but we decided to get rid of our 2 best pass rushers for draft capital, which, you know what, I don't hate. For those Washington Commanders fans watching, we talk about, we gave up on the season. We gave up on our defense. We gave up on what we had. With Chase Young and Montez Sweat, we were still allowing the second most points per game as a defense. So how good were we really, and how bad are we now is something to pay attention to. Speaking of things to pay attention to, F.A. Obata, edge rusher, Washington Commanders last week, had a pretty decent showing in terms of win rate and pressure rate, as well as snap percentage. He is somebody who, could be a good prop bet play. I believe over on DraftKings Sportsbook, he has a 0.25 plus 160 prop there. I think he's somebody that for prop bet purposes, you could definitely, for IDP purposes, take advantage of that there. I think he can get the 0.25 sacks. And first of all, this is an underutilized thing in prop betting, looking at the defense special teams props, because you go to like edge rushers and you look at the prop bets for sacks. Some of them, they're measured in 0.25 increments. The NFL doesn't measure in 0.25 increments for sacks. They measure in half and either a full sack. So you're it's almost like you're getting away free money here for some of these edge rushers who get these 0.25 sacks. And I think F.A. Obata is somebody that you could pay attention to going forward. At the linebacking situation is Jamin Davis. For a defensive back, it's Cameron Curl. Going to the Giants side of the ball, Crispy, see your question in the chat. We'll get to that in 1 second. It's Kayvon Thibodeau, it's Bobby Okereke. And then somebody that I'm actually pretty high on this week is Jason Pinnock. We know Xavier McKinney the past 3 weeks has been playing a majority of snaps in the box. However, if you go back to the last time the Commanders faced the Giants in the Meadowlands, we actually did see Jason Pinnock, who is technically the free safety of the New York Giants, play 14 box snaps to McKinney's 21, and he turned that performance, that alignment, into a 6 total tackle performance and 1 sack for 14 points using Fantasy Pros IDP scoring. Without the utilization of Antonio Gibson this week and the fact that they will be emphasizing Brian Robinson more, I think you are going to see Pinnock again play closer to the line of scrimmage and help out more in run support. And I could definitely see him returning some of that performance that you saw back in week, I believe it was 7. So yes, definitely those would be the Giants plays I'd be looking at this week. Okay. Crispy, what do you got for us? What's good, fellas? A lot. We're here talking fantasy football. Thanks for joining. Got an IDP question for you. Cam Curl, more of a start or less of a start versus the Giants? He has Brisker, Lenore, and Winfield. Yes, he is definitely a start this week. You listen to what Colby said a while ago. It's basically the Saquon Barkley show. The Giants are going to be running it. You want a run-stopping defensive back who can help out and run support. There you go. Yes, definitely what you're going to be rolling with there. Chasing Ships says, I've heard Colby talk about some DFS today. Can we get his top DFS lineup for today? Putting you on the spot there, Colby. If you want to take some time whenever you want, whenever you're ready, just let me know and we'll put it up here or talk about it if you want to.
I got it.
What do you think?
Yeah, so I did a podcast with Bob Lung this week over at Big Guy Fantasy Sports. Excuse me, for we call it Consistently Cash. And the lineup that we did over there, I'll kind of give it to you here. Of course, it went away. We went Kyler Murray. I lied. We took him out. So we actually went Jared Goff, Aaron Jones, Brian Robinson Jr., Amon-Ra St. Brown, Tank Dell, DJ Moore, and then we went double tight end with Trey McBride, Tyler Conklin, and the Commanders defense. But you could pivot a little bit. Like you could move down from Goff to Murray. You'd still have the Murray and McBride stack. And then you could maybe upgrade from flex from Tyler Conklin, depending on kind of how you feel about him. Or you can move some of those guys around. The one guy that I don't have in the DFS lineups that I really tried to fit in, but I ultimately went with Amon-Ra instead, was Austin Eckler. After seeing what the Pittsburgh running backs did to that Green Bay defense and with the injuries for the Chargers offense, I think Eckler is going to be involved both on the ground and actually a bunch in the passing attack as well. So my top pay up options for the week are Amon-Ra St. Brown and Austin Eckler. And then quarterback, it's pretty much Stroud, Murray, or Jared Goff. I think those are the three that you can settle in. If you're going to go GPP tournaments, you could look to like a Tua or a Dak if you think he's going to continue to throw it. But that's kind of the lineup I'm rolling with right now.
Nice. Thanks, Colby. Let's see here. Crispy's got a follow-up question here at defensive lineman. Gregory Rousseau has been balling out. I got Rashawn Gary versus the Chargers. You should see a ton of Eckler. Phillips, I'm starting. Wilkins, Bosa versus Green Bay. So I don't understand what the question is. Oh, here we go. Any one of those above DLs starting over Rousseau versus Zach Wilson? No, I think Zach Wilson's he's gonna get his today, and not in a good way versus Gregory Rousseau, just because that offensive line can't block worth a you know what for the New York Jets. So yeah, I would stick with Rousseau. Gary's battling an injury this week, which could be problematic. Otherwise I would kind of lean towards Gary, but yeah, I'm definitely going to roll with Rousseau in this matchup versus the Jets. Let's see here. Chasing Ship says, thanks, Colby. I'm going to add that lineup. Sweet. And Crispy says, thanks, Jorge. No, thank you, Chris. Appreciate it. Okay, let's get to our next game here. Tampa Bay at San Francisco, 41.5 over under -12. Ryan Neal, defensive back, out versus the 49ers, which is not surprising that he's out, whether injury or just he hasn't been basically playing well at all. So they've been kind of phasing him out in recent weeks. So not something you should be paying attention to. He went from playing a majority of snaps along with Anton Winfield to playing only 33% in week 10. So that kind of tells you all you need to know as far as what to do with Ryan Neal if you have him on your fantasy teams. For the 49ers here, I think, and Colby, I haven't really talked to you about this per se, but Brandon Ayuk, is he a must start for you, wide receiver 2 flex going forward this season, or has been this year?
Absolutely. Yeah, he's their top receiver. I have more shares of Debo this year than I do Brandon Ayuk, but Ayuk's the top guy, and I really like him today. We've seen these Tampa Bay corners get abused. So give me Ayuk at least as a wide receiver 2 moving forward. It's a good schedule coming up for him too, starting with this game as we've seen Tampa Bay just get abused. In this game, I actually like the over. I think there's going to be some points scored predominantly by Tampa Bay. Or, I'm sorry, by San Francisco. Tampa Bay will score a little bit, but yeah, Brandon Ayuk is at a low end wide receiver 2 at worst moving forward.
All right, Tyler, Colby just mentioned Deebo Samuel. We saw him return last week, had a lot of his success on that end around for a touchdown. But given the matchup this week versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and how susceptible they are to the slot wide receiver position, which Ayuk has been primarily utilized the past few games played, are you thinking that he's going to return some value from just a receiver perspective versus a gadget play player this week, or is it still undecided for you?
I think he can. I do, however, think that the top I don't think he's in the top receiving options on this team, as much as it hurts me to say. Kittle's been actually really consistent this year. Brandon Ayuk is the unquestioned wide receiver 1 to me, and Christian McCaffrey is getting near double-digit targets every week. So I like Debo. I think he's startable. Is he a wide receiver 2 or above? No, I don't believe so. I think there are a lot of guys that I would start over him. I'd be okay with him being my flex, though.
Okay. The aforementioned David Ibrahim, who compared Colby Conway to Vanilla Ice, is now joining us on screen. How's it going, Dave?
Bro, I need you to show that photo, all right? You got to show that photo. It is absolutely Colby. You can't tell me that's not Colby.
That one, the one that you sent was the first couple ones I pulled up on Google. I was like, listen, I love David, but I can't see it. And then the one you said, I was like, okay, I can see it. I can see where you're getting it in that one.
Come on, Jorge. You got to bring it up. As soon as I saw him, like, that's Vanilla Ice, you know. Anyway, sorry guys, I'm back in Anne Frank's attic right here in the garage. So
you can't use that reference. We talked about this last time. That is a horrible reference. Anyhow, let's see here. Let's pull up the picture here just so people can know.
You didn't bring me on to be politically correct, right? Yeah. That is that not Colby? Come on, man. There's the other photo too. The one with the white hat. That's even better.
I got a silver hat right here I could throw on to try to make it more.
Come on, man. We screenshot that.
You need the soul patch. You got to grow the soul patch.
Yeah, it doesn't quite grow in right there. Unfortunately, I'm not cool like that.
Oh my god.
What's happening, fellas?
Yeah, okay. There may be you may be onto something there, Dave. You might be onto something. All right, let's. We were talking about before you jumped on. We were talking about the wide receiver situation here for San Francisco, whatever in terms of our thoughts for Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. But David, let me ask you now: if you had to pick one wide receiver, okay, it's a hypothetical scenario for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this week to have more of a stellar quote unquote performance, would you trust Mike Evans or Chris Godwin? And let's say
Evans. It's absolutely Mike Evans. I mean, he is the go-to guy for Baker. Godwin gets the looks when Evans is hurt. Simple as that. When you look at Godwin's touchdowns, it's either been when Evans has been out of the game pretty much. But yeah, it's absolutely Evans. I mean, Evans is getting typically 8 to 12 targets a game. He's his go-to guy down the field, short yardage. Evans is 100% the guy to own.
I will say that the 49ers are allowing the 10th most fantasy points per game. Again, tell me if you've heard this before all morning, folks. So the slot wide receiver position with 14.5 average. So Chris Godwin, I don't know if I would. I agree with you. I think I'd go Mike Evans in this situation, but I wouldn't totally discount Godwin in this matchup either, given that recent stat I just put out there. But again, for DFS purposes, again, I like to look at, not just the obvious plays, but the plays that could free you up some cash to allocate to different positions. And if not Chris Godwin, Trey Palmer has also been playing a lot of snaps in the slot, and he could be a deep pull for you there, which I believe his salary is also under 4,500 on DK. I will make sure to double check that for you though.
If you lost Andrews this week, don't skip over Cade Otton. He's not a bad option. I mean, is he going to get you 8 catches for 100 yards? Probably not. But in the red zone, Baker does like him.
No, you're not wrong there. I got a question here from Drew Markham. Welcome. Good morning, fellas. Good morning to you, Drew. Rest of the season, which two would you rather have? Ken Walker and Michael Pittman, or David Echan and Hollywood Brown? For me, it's Walker and Pittman. As much as I love Echan, I do not love the lack of production that Hollywood Brown has been showing. Now, I know Kyler Murray is back, but damn it. I say that, and now I'm trying to talk. I'm walking it back. I think I'd go Echan and Hollywood. Just because I trust Chan and Mostert in this. I trust this. Okay, let me back this up even further. So you have Ken Walker and you got Zach Charbonnet, who I think Charbonnet is turning into an every week flex option for people as his usage has gone up, as well as his average yards per carry. But I really love the duo of Mostert and Chan. I think they both could be fantasy viable for you. So I don't think in either situation, either the Ken Walker, Charbonnet, or the Achan Mostert, you're worried about them eating into each other where they both kind of negate each other's fantasy upside. So it really comes down to Michael Pittman or Hollywood Brown. And we had seen for a good chunk of the season, when he was healthy, it's the Josh Downs show. And all of a sudden he had a couple of bad weeks, and then they had the bye week now. And so there is that you have to get past. But Pittman, he's been saved by the big play and the touchdown. but hasn't been really efficient as a wide receiver compared to Josh Downs. Conversely, you go to Hollywood Brown, should be the number one guy, but hasn't been playing like the number one guy. But it gets Kyler Murray back. So, given that situation, it comes down to me, the quarterback situation, who's getting the ball to this receiver. And I trust Kyler Murray more so than I do Minshew. So I would go with Chan and Hollywood. Dave, what are your thoughts?
See, I've said it before. Chan and Mostert remind me of 2016 Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman. Like those two are just fantastic. RB1 good duos. The trouble is Miami against good teams is horrible. They're only good against terrible teams. So going into playoffs, we're getting into playoff time, baby. I mean, we need reliability, we need consistency, and I just don't want to go into playoffs with Achane, who might get 3 carries for 40 yards, and it's just not going to do it. Ken Walker is the guy there. He's got the ability to just break off a massive play. Pittman's the number one. He gets the look. So give me the night, Walker and Pittman.
Nice. Colby, what are your thoughts here?
I am going Walker and Pittman solely on the back of Michael Pittman, just because I do like him a lot. And he's got, I believe it's 7 games with eight or more receptions this year. Marquise Brown has yet to do it. I know he's getting Kyler back, but I trust Pittman more. So I'm going to go Walker and Pittman amongst these two duos.
And Tyler, to round us out.
Dave made a very good point there with the Dolphins not being very good against good teams or good defenses. And their I guess the rest of their season schedule is not great. They've got the Raiders today, but then they're playing the Jets, the Commanders, the Titans, the Jets again, the Cowboys, and the Ravens. Those are some really good defenses that they have to face the rest of the way. So there, I'm going to take Ken Walker and Michael Pittman. Michael Pittman has been extremely consistent all year. Depending on what you're looking at, he's about the wide receiver 13. He's getting targeted like crazy, like Colby said. And he does have the one big play, but it's very largely consistent performances for Pittman. And Walker, it seems like he's getting healthy and getting back to being healthy again. So I'm going to go Ken Walker and Michael Pittman there.
All right, we got 3 for Ken Walker and Pittman, 1 for Achane and Hollywood. There you go, Drew. Hope that helps. I got JB_fantasy. Why does Dave hide out in his garage? And as soon as he says that, Dave jumps off screen. Perfect timing to jump off screen. Because now jumping on screen is Stacy Perez. Stacy, how are you this morning?
Hey guys, I'm doing great. How are y'all doing?
Doing great. Okay, Dave is back in his garage.
Sorry,
so do you want
we'll see you guys.
You want to answer the question here from JB_fantasy, Dave? It says, why does Dave hide out in his garage?
Because I'm here in California and it's nearly 8 o'clock and I got 3 kiddos, so hiding, talking secret fantasy stuff.
Love it. Okay, so for the defensive side of the ball here, actually, let me talk about one more thing. Rachaad White. What do we do with Rachaad White? And I'm glad both Tyler and Stacy are here because on our Dynasty 365 show last week, we were talking about from a Dynasty perspective, what do you do with Rachaad White? And Tyler, you had a pretty good case to be made here. Could you just tell the viewers what your thoughts are on Rachaad White from a Dynasty perspective?
From a Dynasty perspective, Rachaad White's one of my top sells right now. He's been performing really well this year when it comes to fantasy output. His efficiency numbers are not good. His broken tackle numbers are not good. Yards after contact numbers are not good. So anything you look at that's kind of showing you his actual football performance is not reflecting very well on Rachaad White. That said, he's in the RB13 right now, I believe, something like that. He's performing for fantasy. He's getting a lot of targets. He's getting a lot of carries. So I really like him rest of season. Dynasty value, I think it's a really good time to try to cash in on what Rachaad White is right now because he's a 3rd round pick. That is the running back for the Buccaneers on kind of no matter what they say, this was a lost season for them. They ate a bunch of dead cap. that's just kind of what they were doing. They're coming back from the Brady era. They're eating a bunch of dead cap to come back and try to compete the following season. So he's very easily replaceable in that offense. So dynasty-wise, I'm selling him.
But you got to give Baker Mayfield some credit, man. Like, he's making them a decent team. Like, without Brady, everyone expected them just to absolutely crumble and tank. And he's got him competing for maybe winning his division.
Yeah. Love me some Baker, man. Good for him. I love seeing him succeed after he was dumped by the Browns.
Yeah.
I question what you just said there as far as your positivity and uplifting attitude towards your thoughts of Baker Mayfield, because I'm pretty sure I've heard some negative things as well, but that's just me.
Don't bring down my Baker, okay? It's my boy. You're my boy, Blue.
I will go on this rant if you really want me to, Jorge.
I do not want you to go on this. Colby's nodding his head. Yes, go on this.
Yeah, let's get some chaos on this Sunday morning.
We have lost a lot of QBs. If you know, you're one of the people who had, you know, Burrow or what have you. I mean, I don't mind going in with Baker. Look, am I stoked about it? No, but it's okay. I mean, he's a low end QB1.
Yeah, he's been a QB1 every week for the last 4 weeks.
Yeah. Go on, Jorge.
Yeah, let's please. Let's. No, I'm not gonna. We're leaving this one alone.
Wait, so we're not fighting? Is that not happening?
I mean, if you want to jump in on this and have an opinion on Baker Mayfield this morning, I'm sure people would love to.
No, I'm okay.
Okay, you sure? Okay.
I like seeing other people fight when I'm not involved in it.
Oh, okay. Stacey, do you want to get involved in this fight at all, or are you okay sitting out this one? Or
Baker Mayfield averaging 17.1 fantasy points per game this season. You could do a lot worse.
Yeah. Exactly.
I like how Tyler just quickly went to like,
yeah, now we're all agreeing. That's no fun either.
Yeah, I like Baker as a fantasy quarterback. I was about to rant about football implications and roster building, not fantasy output.
All right. Well, we'll have to find your trigger next time. Don't worry, we will. I'll look for it. Finishing off this game, though, looking at the IDP side of the ball, it really comes down to, for Tampa Bay, Antoine Winfield, defensive back, Levante David, Devin White as your linebackers. On San Francisco, yes, give me Chase Young, give me Nick Bosa, give me Drake Greenlaw, give me Fred Warner. Here's a name that, Talanoa Hufanga, safety for the San Francisco 49ers. This, depending on your level of expertise playing IDP, this may be relevant to you. And for those who are kind of relatively new, then this could be very relevant to you. Last year played in the beginning of the season a lot closer to the line of scrimmage, had a lot of upside. Then all of a sudden he started to get deployed more deep at free safety, playing more in coverage, taking away a lot of his tackle upside. And that kind of left a lot of fantasy managers, especially in IDP Dynasty, with a sour taste in their mouth. Hufanga this year continued that trend of playing more in coverage than closer to the line of scrimmage. And everybody started to think, oh, well, this is horrible. He's definitely not a must start for me. He's definitely not even potentially a roster. Somebody who's not on this pregame show, who's normally on this pregame show, actually traded him to me. And then 2 days later was like, yeah, I dropped him from all my leagues because there's no point in having him. Well, that was a mistake, because over the past 4 weeks, and again, I won't name who, but I think we can all piece together who I'm talking about. I hope you're having fun in Mexico, Nate. Over the past 4 weeks, we've seen Talanoa Hufanga basically reassert himself as the primary box safety, and has been the DB9 in Fantasy Pros IDP scoring during that time frame, with an average of 13.7 points per game. Now, here's the thing this week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Yes, we know that Rachaad White is not an in-between the tackles power running back that Hufanga can help playing in run support. But Hufanga does play a decent amount of snaps at free safety and at slot corner, which should basically help him in the tackling department while playing in coverage, therefore compensating for the lack of box snaps he has this week. And that's going to take us to the end of the 1 p.m. games. Stacey, let's kick off 4 o'clock. Let's talk about the Jets and the Buffalo Bills. Let's talk about the wide receiver position for the New York Jets. Last week, you saw Garrett Wilson do Garrett Wilson things and then hurt his elbow. And at first I was like, oh, well, he hurt his elbow, rub some dirt on it, you'll be fine. but this has been something that's been limiting him in practice for majority of the week. If Garrett Wilson for some reason can't play, although some reports have been saying that he will fight through it, but if for some reason he cannot go today, and we'll find out in the next 27 minutes, is there anybody on the Jets wide receiving core that you feel, is worthy of a start here, versus Buffalo? Or is it one of those things where it's like, let me find some other player that has maybe some more upside, a la, let me just throw out here. I'll throw out some names like a Wandale or a JSN or a Jaden Reed. Would you play any of those players other than any other option for the Jets?
Oh yeah, I play Jaden Reed 100%. And that's not just my Packers bias. That's the numbers. Jaden Reed's been amazing this year. He's the Packers. I mean, in my opinion, and I think the numbers support it, he's the Packers' #1 receiver. So go with Jaden Reed if you have that option. I actually just picked him up a few minutes ago. I was waiting to find out what was going on with Noah Brown in a league, and if he's going to be out, I just went ahead and went in there and snatched Jaden Reed off waivers, which. Guys, my league, what are you guys doing? Jaden Reed on waivers? Come on now. But yeah, that's what I would do. I'm so glad I timed my entrance perfectly because all of my research for today has been for the 4 p.m. games and later. So kudos to me for jumping on just in time.
Nice. All right, Tyler, thank you very much for joining. He had to dip out, so appreciate your time. And Dave is having some fun. He's having a party at 8 a.m. in the morning in his garage right now, so he'll be back in a little bit. All right, so let's talk about this Jets-Buffalo game. We heard Kyle Ziegler earlier in the show basically talking about if Josh Allen delivers more than 20 points, which he does not anticipate happening, he'll take a pie in the face next week on this pregame show. And Colby, you agreed with that. Could you give a little insight for those who are just tuning in as to why you would not be surprised if Josh Allen does not get over 20 points this week?
Yeah, Jets are tough on good opposing quarterbacks, and Allen has not been good against them dating back to last year. So the 2 games last year, 18 of 34 for 205 and 2 interceptions through the air, and 16 for 27 for 147 and a touchdown. Now, he did run well against them, and that was his only saving grace. And then earlier this year, he didn't run all that much, only 36 yards, had 3 picks, threw for 236 yards. So Jets have been very tough against very good quarterbacks, and Josh Allen he may not be a QB1 this week. I think it's very possible, and I don't want to seem too bullish or overreactionary, because the fact that he does run gives him a little bit of a floor. He may end up being closer to QB20 than he is QB1 this week. I'm just saying, QB 13, QB 14, that would fall true in that statement. And I think that's a very fair range for him. This Jets defense is very, very tough. And if they don't let Allen run, they're going to be able to contain him through the air. And there's also a lot of questions too. What is the Ken Dorsey, or no, they let him go. Who's the OC now? Is it Joe Brady?
Yes.
Joe Brady. Yes.
So what does a Joe Brady offense with Josh Allen look like? Sauce Gardner doesn't shadow. He doesn't travel. I'm sorry, I should say he doesn't travel. So if they move Diggs to the slot, maybe he's got a good advantage there. What happens to some of those other guys? I have a lot more questions than I do answers for Josh Allen this week.
We look at the New York Jets and we look at fantasy points per game allowed. They allow on average to quarterbacks 14.4. So that goes along with the Josh Allen process right there. They allow the fewest points to the wide receiver position with 17.2 per game. But running backs and tight ends have actually been middle of the pack in terms of fantasy points allowed. The Jets are allowing 19.9 points to the running back position, as well as 10.4 points to the tight end position. So if I had to think of a pass catcher outside of Stephon Diggs for the Buffalo Bills, am I immediately bypassing Gabe Davis and his big play upside and going straight to Dalton Kincaid here, Colby?
Absolutely. Go to Dalton Kincaid. He's been so good. And honestly, I just trust him more than Gabriel Davis. So it's Kincaid for me.
And then Breece Hall, we talked about him a little bit earlier. Any concerns with Breece Hall, Stacy, in terms of the fact that, we know that this Jets offense is very one-dimensional, but would you say that his volume is just basically his saving grace here at this point?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you kind of can couple that with the fact that Buffalo's run defense ranks towards the lower end as far as fantasy points that they're giving up to opposing teams' running backs. Hall's averaging right now 13.9 fantasy points over the last 4 weeks. I would take that for my running back too, 100%. And just to go back, Colby, I wanted to jump in with Kincaid. He is the 4th highest scoring fantasy scorer among tight ends in the last 4 weeks behind Hawkinson, Kittle, Kelsey, and Ferguson.
As if you needed more reasons to start Kincaid, there is another one for you. And I will throw out for Breece Hall too. Buffalo's allowed the most receptions and the 2nd most receiving yards to running backs over the last 4 weeks. So I know if you have legalized sports gambling in your state, or you can do Prize Picks or Underdog. I don't know which site you partner with, Jorge, with Fantasy and Frames. Is there a affiliate with one of them?
Yeah, we do have an Underdog affiliate. Yep, if you use promo code Frames and we match up to 100%, they match up rather to 100% of your deposit up to $100. Yep.
Okay, so roll back. I never said Prize Pick. So with Underdog, you go over there and check to see if they have Breece Hall receiving yards, because he should be in a pretty good spot, probably somewhere in the low 20s. That's where he's been in the past couple of weeks, and Buffalo's been pretty generous to running backs through the air.
Is there a code people should use, Jorge, for Underdog?
Promo code Frames. We have a question here from Chasing Ships. Is there a point in starting either cornerback versus the Jets versus Allen? So here's where IDP gets kind of interesting. Sometimes the really, really good players on defense are the players you do not want to be starting in IDP. And let me explain. If I am an opposing quarterback, okay, and I'm going to throw the ball to my number 1 wide receiver who's guarded by, I don't know, a person like by the name of Sauce Gardner, am I trusting my wide receiver to make that catch, or am I trusting more, Sauce Gardner to make a play on the ball and basically shut down my wide receiver? Okay, depends on the wide receiver. I'll give you that. More often than not, I'm going to shy away from Sauce Gardner and kind of go on the other side of the field, kind of like how back in the day in the Legion of Boom era, people shied away from Richard Sherman.
Yep.
Yeah. So in this case, if I had to pick a defensive back to start specifically in a corner back spot, it would be DJ Reed on the other side of the ball. But then again, I think you could find other cornerback options there that you could play. But if I had to pick one on the Jets, it'd be DJ Reed. Then JB_fantasy. Any updates on Garrett Wilson? None yet, but we'll be checking in on that soon. This is kind of a gross matchup here. Let's get to the IDP side of the ball then. So we look at the defensive line. Quinnen Williams, he just is not getting the sack opportunities, and that's unfortunate. He's being double teamed all season. Last year, he was getting sack after sack after sack, and it's just not panning out this year. I can't really say that he's somebody as a defensive lineman I'm comfortable starting. People that I am comfortable starting, though, are Quincy Williams and CJ Mosley at the linebacker position. CJ Mosley had an absurd tackle efficiency rate last week at 25% for 15 total tackles for PFF. Quincy Williams right behind him at 12.7 with 8 tackles. Both should be started in your IDP leagues. And then we talk about a defensive back play here. If I had to pick one for the Jets, look, both Jordan Whitehead and Tony Adams played 100% of their defensive snaps last week. But if I had to pick one, I would pick on Lightning striking twice again. Jordan Whitehead, I believe he had 3 interceptions in week 1 versus Josh Allen. I'm not saying he's going to get 3 interceptions this week, but I would trust Jordan Whitehead over Tony Adams to make the splash plays there at defensive back for the Jets. Okay, let's go to the next.
You mentioned Legion of Boom. Dude, we haven't seen a defense like that in a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, that 2013, 2012 Legion of Boom, man, that was unstoppable. I mean, there was believe it or not, the Jags, a couple of years later, right? A few years later.
That one season. Yeah, the one season they made it to the AFC Championship. That's right.
Yeah, but and like Sherman, I mean, prime Sherman was a beast. But yeah, it's one of the most unstoppable cornerbacks. That's what you get when you put up, I guess, a sorry receiver like Crabtree, right?
Nice throwback. And the scary thing is, it's so much of a throwback from so many years ago that I don't think the audience actually knows that reference anymore. And that makes me feel really old.
Damn, we're getting old.
Yeah,
Everyone needs to know that reference.
That was coming up on 10 years ago.
No,
Ugh.
no
Yeah,
way.
it is. It's
Oh, I'm
coming up
getting
on
old.
10 years. Yeah, but it's funny that you mentioned the Legion of Boom, because that leads us into our very next game we're talking about, which is Seattle at the Rams, 46.5 over under -1.5. And you know what? I think the Seahawks are building something which could potentially in a couple of years be Legion of Boom-esque. And they really nailed their draft pick with one of the draft picks with Devin Witherspoon, who as a rookie is playing 100% of the snaps at cornerback, playing the majority of the snaps at slot. Now, this is a cornerback or defensive back and cornerback specific leagues that I would insert into my starting lineup, because he's been playing making a lot of plays on the ball. And slot corners tend to be targeted more often than not than outside corners, and so I love that. And in fact, let me just rattle off the IDPs here before we get to the offensive side of the ball. For safety, though, that's what I'm looking at. Jamal Williams, though, has been dealing with a knee injury. I don't know if it's the same knee injury that kept him out all of last year. If it is, that's very concerning, because that was a very serious knee injury that kept him out. So what does that mean? That could mean a bump in snaps and for Julian Love this week if Jamal Adams does not play. So pay attention to that as we get closer to kickoff. So if Jamal Adams is declared out, Julian Love gets a bump up in the rankings there. And speaking of rankings, head over to fantasyandframes.com and check out Nate and my IDP rankings for week 11. Those will obviously be updated throughout the morning and have been updated throughout the morning as we get more injury news and notes. Bobby Wagner, obvious start here at linebacker. For defensive line, Boye Mafe has been playing lights out. I believe he's had a sack in every game since like week 4. So he has been playing lights out. Week 10, he had a pressure rate of 16.7%. Same with a win rate of 17.7%. This guy is turning into a must start. In fact, he's probably been a must start for weeks now. And we've been writing about him all season, and he's just been taking off there. So definitely somebody to pay attention to there. On the flip side of the ball, for the Los Angeles Rams, Aaron Donald in defensive tackle only leagues, he's definitely a start there. Ernest Jones, who missed their last game, it should be back this week at middle linebacker. So definitely somebody you want to be playing there at that position. Now, what does that mean for the defensive back? What does that mean for Jordan Fuller? We did see Jordan Fuller take a few more snaps closer to the line of scrimmage in the absence of Ernest Jones. I don't think you see that this week. I think we go back to seeing him playing more fully in coverage, which gives basically tanks his IDP value at defensive back for the Rams there. Okay, here we go.
Man, Geno Smith, man, how's he been? He's been in the league since man discovered fire, and all of a sudden he's just been fantasy relevant, bro. Like, I heard a rumor that he found a flyer on the ground, and it was learn how to play football, and he saw that a year ago, and since then has gotten good. Or maybe it's one of those football for dummies books. I don't know, but he's been good, man. Like, he is a serviceable fantasy option. I never ever thought I would have said Geno Smith is a QB1.
Okay, so I have a comment to make on your Football for Dummies book. Okay, for those who are new to the fantasy football content creator space and want to actually get into producing, more content as you go forward, it really helps to understand the other side of the ball. So back in 2017, when I started to get, heavily invested with Fantasy and Frames and getting, good information out there, I actually purchased a Football for Dummies book because I wanted to learn more about the actual game on the field, not just from a fantasy perspective. So don't knock Football for Dummies. That's a great book. Howie Long actually wrote that way back in the day. So a lot of that information still holds true. So never be afraid to go the For Dummies route, folks. Hey, you got to learn somehow, some way.
It's a complex game, man. So I came to the US about 10, 11 years ago, roughly. So I used to be a rugby league guy. Watch a bit of AFL, like typical Aussie stuff. And the thing I love about football, and this is just a general rant, by the way, I'll be quick, but it is chess with gigantic men. That's all it is. Like, every play, defensively, offensively, is strategic. It's a manipulation. It's a trick to make someone go this way. So I think that's why I love the sport. Like, there's so much brain to it. It's not just, Like soccer, you just let people go out there and do their thing. Skilled people win. Can't do that with football. Good coaching can beat talent all the time. Yeah,
That
that's my
is,
little rant.
you are the first person not from the United States who's ever made a compliment in that regard towards football that I've ever heard. So thank you very much.
Really?
Yeah, everybody I've met who's been like a pro rugby or pro soccer has always been, oh, football is not that hard. Yada yada. So you're the first. So yeah,
Well,
congratulations.
you think about every single snap, and there's the offensive linemen have got to shift a certain direction. Wide receivers, one might be a decoy, one might be the actual receiver. Running backs got to make it look like they're making a run. It's in the pass. There is so much to it. It's so complex. I love watching the NFL film thing, and they break down every play. It's fantastic.
I am appreciating you geeking out over football so hard right now. This is fantastic. But before we get into more of this game, got a question for you, Dave. Chasing Ships asks, what is Dave's Connect Go? Can you tell people a little bit more about that?
So Connect Go is an app where you can actually book one-on-one time with analysts like Jorge and Colby. They're actually on there. So you go in there and you can book a live session, so 15 or 30-minute session where you get to just have one-on-one time, talk to them about your fantasy team. You can screen share, show them all your lineups and get recommendations. Or if you're an introvert and you just want to keep it private, you can actually text. So there's a text option as well. So if you go to the App Store and look up Connect Go app, you'll find it there.
Very nice. JB_fantasy says he loves the chess analogy. All right, let's get into this game. Let's look at the wide receiver situation. Tyler Lockett dealing with a hamstring injury. Been dealing with that all week. Seattle and the Rams defenses ranked 16th and 18th respectively in most points allowed to slot wide receivers, and ranked 28th and 14th respectively in points allowed to outside wide receivers. So if I'm doing this properly, DK, Puka, JSN, who has been coming on really strong ever since the offensive tackles for the Seahawks have been healthy and giving Geno Smith a little bit more time to basically find more of his receiving options down the field as well as across the middle of the field. Those are obvious. Those to me feel like obvious starts. Maybe some people would argue JSN maybe not so much of an obvious one. I feel very confident in him this week. But dare I say, I'm reading our show sheet as I'm saying this right now, a little behind the scenes, and I even wrote in parentheses after I wrote this, it felt dirty writing this last part. This last part being, dare I say, do we temper expectations for Cooper Kupp this week in Week 11? Is that just lunacy, Stacey?
You're not going to find a bigger Cooper Kupp fan than I am, but I will tell you, over the last month or so, Cooper's targets have been limited to the low single digits. His average fantasy points since his return in week 5 are 13.5. That's a low end wide receiver 2 flex position numbers. But honestly, like in late August and September, right, we had the injury status was out there. That's probably where you drafted him, right? You weren't drafting him as your number one guy. You were taking him a lot lower in the draft because he was falling because of that. So you probably have some better options there. You've been tempering your expectations all season with him. You're just going to keep doing it this week.
Cooper Kupp is frustrating, man. Like because you can never ever sit Cooper Kupp, but you just feel like the upset dad. You're like, you know what? I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. That's really what Cooper Kupp is. Because he is going to be on your wide receiver spot, not even a flex, right? But he's got the talent to go for. If he got 250 yards and 3 touchdowns, no one would be surprised. But for some reason, the Rams, after their Super Bowl run, have just been disappointing fantasy-wise.
Colby, I mentioned JSN, and then we had talked about I talked about Charbonnet a little bit earlier. Both rookies coming in here, starting to kind of assert themselves in this offense. If you had to flex one of these players this week, who would you feel more comfortable flexing, Najigba or Charbonnet?
I will go with JSN. He's the one I prefer. Up to the past couple of weeks, you've actually wanted to start your slot receivers against the Rams. They made a switch. I think I want to say Quentin Lake is getting more slot coverage opportunities, and he's been okay the past couple of weeks. Rams are coming off their bye, so maybe they got a little bit healthier or so be it. But if Lockett plays, JSN gets dinged a little bit, but he might be limited, may not play at all, and then JSN's a surefire start. So I know Charbonnet's he's starting to gain a little steam. I see it on the device the website formerly known as Twitter, which is now X. I'm seeing on there he's gaining a little steam because he's been catching more passes, but Ken Walker's still the guy on the ground. So I'm going to go JSN amongst those two.
All right, let's stick with you, Colby, and answer this question here from Chasing Ships. Is it Cup or Puka today that you're starting if you had to choose one?
Well, every league I have them, I'm starting both, to be honest, just because honestly, I'm at the point where I'm just afraid to pick the wrong one. So I'm going to start them both and live with one being really good and one maybe not being as good. But for today, I am reluctantly going to go with Cooper Kupp.
But you can start both, right? I mean, it's a resemblant of 2017 when Juju's rookie year. You were playing Antonio Brown and Juju Smith-Schuster, and you were happy about it. So I don't think you can go wrong with the other option.
I said both as soon as I saw that question pop up. I was like, why do you have to pick?
Yeah.
Just both of them.
Yeah.
Exactly.
If you have to pick one, I'll go Kupp. But in every league I have, like I said, I am starting both.
People overthink guys on the same team all the time. So I said it last week. If you had Herbert, Allen, and Austin Eckler, you wouldn't be scared to fire them all up, right? They're all QB1s, RB1s, wide receiver ones. So don't be afraid just because they're on the same team to fire up, those guys.
All right, last question here. Running back situation. Charbonnet, Henderson. If you had to pick one this week, who would you roll with? Let's start with you, Dave, and then we'll go to Stacy, then Colby.
Give me a glass of that Chardonnay. I want that. I don't know about Henderson. It's just unreliable, man. Like, I don't know what kind of ramps we're getting. I think they're going to go to the air. So, Henderson is maybe going to fall in the end zone. I don't want to go with that risk. So, Chardonnay, that he's going to at least get some garbage time work if they get to a big lead. And he's getting passing down work as well. So I'm good with 8 to 10 touches from the glass of vino.
What about you, Stacy?
Yeah, couldn't have said it any better, Dave. I would definitely go Charbonnet over Henderson if I have to pick. The glass of Charbonnet, that's usually my line, Dave. You're reading my notes over here.
Love it.
Colby, to wrap up with you real quick, which one of the two would you go with?
3 for 3. Charbonnet, I'll have a glass as well.
All right. Let's go to Minnesota at Denver, 41 over-under, -2.5. Minnesota has given up 13.7 points per game to the slot wide receiver position. Jerry Jeudy, the past 3 weeks, has had the most slot snaps. Man, we keep trying to make Jerry Jeudy a thing. We try and say, okay, he's giving a great opportunity, as a great situation here, and it's not happening. It's been the Cortland Sutton show as of late. Colby, any reason to have any confidence in Jerry Jeudy this week going against the Vikings?
I'll be more of a pessimist. You're right. It's the Cortland Sutton show. He's getting the targets in the red zone. It just seems like Russ doesn't even look his way to Jerry Jeudy. And it's like, if he does, it's just those little curl routes. He sits right at the sticks, finds the zones, kind of just hang out there. His upside it's non-existent this year. So if you don't have many other options, you're probably stuck starting Jerry Jeudy. But if you do have other options, like I am in a guillotine league and I'm sitting Jerry Jeudy this week, and I was quite happy to do so, if I'm being honest.
Nice. Stacy, for the running back situation here for Minnesota.
Can I answer the Jerry Jeudy question too?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So I found this stat earlier today when I was looking this up. Judy's been targeted 42 times this season, which is tied for 56th most amongst, gosh, I can't talk this morning, with wide receivers who have at least 20 targets. Do you know who else has 42 targets this season? Darius Slayton. So Jerry Jeudy and Darius Slayton. That's gross. Come on, guys. Yeah.
Man, I want no part of Judge Jeudy.
Yeah.
He can sit on the bench, go to trial. It's terrible. The only option you want in Denver is really Sutton, right? I mean, are you truly even playing Javonte Williams with faith? You may have to play him because of where you drafted him. I don't know what your running backs look like, but tell me anyone else on the Broncos that you're starting with confidence other than Cortland Sutton.
It's not Marvin Mims, that's for sure.
No.
Let's get into Javonte Williams for a second. So the past 3 weeks in half PPR, he's the RB 14 in points with the 18.2 points per game average. We look back at his game log. Week 7, 9.6, week 8 versus Kansas City, 15.8, and then last week versus Buffalo, 17. You mentioned that you have the negative connotation with Javonte Williams, but do you think he's turning the corner here, Dave? Do you leave room for the upside here?
No, he's on such a short leash that I think if he has a bad game, McLaughlin, is that his name? Sorry. He'll come in and steal the work, who, to be honest, is pretty comparable with Javonte. And you see that, the way that Sean Payton runs them is they just give him a drive each. So Javonte gets a drive, McLaughlin gets a drive. It's really going to be a hot hand approach. I don't want to take that risk.
Stacy, Alexander Madison should be playing today. Are you flexing him if you have to? Or are you flexing him? Obviously, if you have to, right? But are you flexing him this week?
Madison's playing after everybody blew their fab on Ty Chandler this week. So, of course that happens. The last thing I saw was he was still questionable to play full participant in practice on Friday. Your Magic 8 Ball saying all signs point to yes, probably that he is going to be playing. Chandler wasn't super. I mean, his touchdown saved his game last week when he came in. After Madison had that concussion, he had 44 yards. That was against New Orleans as a pretty stingy run defense. But honestly, I mean, both guys are projected to be in single-digit points, Madison and Chandler. Right now, I saw Fantasy Pros does have Chandler ranked slightly above Madison. I think that's going to depend on what we find out here. Well, it's 11:30, so we should be getting some more information to find out whether or not for sure he plays. But, I mean, honestly, if you have better options, I'd probably want to throw in somebody else than either one of those guys.
I think the Vikings have a come to Jesus moment today. At the end of the day, there's enough tape now on Josh Dobbs to game plan for him. Obviously, 2 weeks ago, no one had any idea he was even going to start. And I'm not saying he's not been impressive, but when you have 2 weeks of film and he's a running quarterback, I don't know, man. Without Justin Jefferson, I think the Vikings are going to struggle today. So I don't see that run game really being effective.
And Denver's defense has been so darn good.
Mm-hmm.
I understand the 70-point game happened. It is what it is. That is not the defining moment of that defense. And I understand they let 28 against Chicago the next week. But since then, 19 to Kansas City, 17 for Green Bay, 9 for Kansas City, and then they were fine against Buffalo. I kind of hate that I'm about to say this. So I'm putting that out there first, just so everyone knows. I don't feel great saying this. But I don't know if many people want to play Denver right now. That defense is good. I understand the offense, it kind of is what it is, but I would not want to go up against that defense right now because they are playing really, really good football on the defensive side.
They beat 2 really good teams in a row, and it was not a fluke. They were in it the whole game. So I don't know. I wouldn't be shocked if they make a run. Who knows? Defenses can carry teams. I mean, Peyton Manning in 2015? I mean, let's be honest, he really was carried by his defense. Von Miller in his prime, that was an intense defense. They went to Super Bowl against Carolina, and I think it was 13-3 game, something like that. But yeah.
Okay, well, with that talk of the Denver defense, who are we confidently starting this week for Minnesota? Addison, Hawkinson. Are we comfortably starting Dobbs this week, Colby?
Comfortably, no. You just do have to start him, I would think. Depending on your situation, you may have to, just because he can run a little bit. I'm not comfortable starting him. I'm a little worried with Addison, just because if he's going to see a lot of Patrick Surtain can be very tough on receivers. And they do move Addison around enough, so that gives me enough kind of optimism for him there. You are comfortably starting TJ Hawkinson. That is happening. But outside of that, that's really, I don't like any of their running backs. I'll play Dobbs if I have to. I think in a couple one quarterback leagues, I am not playing him. I am playing him in super flex formats. And then Addison you're probably going to play him, but I would temper expectations. So Hawkinson's the only comfortable start on the offensive side for Minnesota.
All right, let's get over to the IDP side of the ball here. We start with Minnesota. Danielle Hunter, just a must start every single week, has been for years. You go to the linebacker position. Jordan Hicks suffered a shin injury last week, And in relief came the undrafted rookie Ivan Pace out of the University of Cincinnati. Excuse me, Ivan Pace Jr. He is in line to start this week at a majority of the snaps, 100% of the snaps at linebacker, because the Vikings have been utilizing 3 safeties to basically help out in run support as well as in coverage. So it's Danielle Hunter, Ivan Pace Jr. I think he has, again, great matchup, great opportunity. And of course, if you have Josh Metellus, if you have Harrison Smith, if you have Cameron Bynum, who I believe is Fantasy Pros top scoring defensive back, you're starting all 3 of these people. For the defensive side of the ball for Denver, Nick Benito, look, he has a tremendous win rate and pressure rate over the course of his playing time for Denver this year. But we saw Baron Browning come back last week, and it really was the Baron Browning, Jonathan Cooper show, both playing 64.8% of snaps. It's because of that I'm fading Nick Benito this week at defensive line. Linebacker, this one scratches my head because Alex Singleton, he's been playing a majority of the snaps, 100% of the snaps last week. Tackle efficiency of 20.4% with 11 tackles. Just to give you some idea, anything like 13 and above, 14 is considered good. Okay, this guy's playing at a 24% tackle efficiency. This is lights out. Josie Jewell, this is the one that's the head scratcher, because last year both he and Singleton were one of the best tandems in all of IDP fantasy football on the Denver Broncos in terms of putting up high tackle volume week after week after week. You can insert 1A, 1B, whatever you want to call it. Jewell had an injury earlier in the season, missed a week, came back, was playing, on average close to 75% of the snaps. And then all of a sudden last week he jumps down to 61. We saw Jewell basically take over there. That's a little concerning. That makes me want to fade Jewell a little bit. If I had a better option like a Jamin Davis for Washington, I'd probably slide him in versus Josie Jewell. And I would keep going the route there with Alex Singleton. And so those are my confident IDP plays there. And with that, let's get into the last game of our slate today that we'll be talking about. Philadelphia at Kansas City, 45.5 over under, -2.5. Man. So Stacey, let me start with you. The Kansas City Chiefs allow, according to
the Fighting Taylor Swifts.
And Dave immediately jumps off
myself. I'm sorry. I'm just going to apologize in advance.
Okay. Let's back up. Let me answer this question, and we'll get into the Fighting Taylor Swifts. Okay, one second.
Colby's like, I'm never coming back on the show.
Taylor Swift, that's Travis's girlfriend, right?
Yes.
There you go. That's it.
Okay,
that's right.
What I thought. Yeah.
Yep. And the Swifties. Or lack thereof. Okay. Is Roshan Johnson a flexible play today? I know Herbert is back. We've just seen Foreman is active too. Foreman is active.
Yep. Is he?
We'll just mute that. I don't think he's a flexible play today. It's Herbert, and if Foreman is Foreman playing today?
He's active.
He is.
Yep.
Then Roshan, no, definitely not. Okay, let's go back to this game. So Stacey, where do you think Philadelphia ranks in terms of points per game allowed to slot wide receivers? Where do you think they rank in terms of do they allow the most, the least, middle of the pack? Get a guess.
Am I allowed to look at the show sheet to answer this question? No.
Something tells me you already have, so why don't you just
Well, I saw the number, but I don't know where that ranks though.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, their defense has been pretty solid lately, right? I mean, these one of their best defensive
all right, I'll get another one if it's broken.
So I'm gonna go with. I think they rank pretty low as far as points per game that they give up to slot receivers.
You would be right if you were to flip, how you were looking at that.
Yes. I think they give up the least amount is what I was trying to say, or one of the least amounts.
They actually give up the most to slot wide receivers.
Oh, the most. Okay, well, just kidding.
But it was 50-50 right there, so it's okay.
Yeah.
Which tells me Rashee Rice should be in for a day. There is no defensive back for the Eagles, especially their slot cornerback, that I am worried about slowing down Rashee Rice. But at the same time, I am concerned because Rashee Rice has had plenty of times to have that breakout, and he always falls short. But I don't know. I'm feeling pretty confident about him this week. I think this is the week that they go off. The over-under of 45.5 does tell me that this should be – not that I needed that to tell me that this should be a high-scoring affair, but it should be a high-scoring affair there. And I think this could be the week that Rashee Rice finally goes over and has a huge breakout in the Super Bowl rematch.
Jorge, before we go, can we put that photo that I emailed you up?
Did you email me another photo?
Yeah. You got to put it up. This is a better one.
Oh my God!
Come on.
All right. While you're looking for that, Rashee Rice has second most targets on the Chiefs to anybody not named Travis Kelce. He's got 40. He's got 378 yards, also second most, and he is tied for the most touchdowns in that group as well, along with, of course, he's tied with Travis Kelce. I mean, who are you really looking at there? Are you looking at Sky Moore, MVS, Justin Watson? No, of course you're not. Kadarius Toney, forgot about him. He's still on there. Yeah, you're looking at Rashee Rice if you have to put somebody else on there who's not Travis Kelce.
So, Stacey, you missed this a few hours ago. Dave basically said that Colby reminds him of Vanilla Ice, and so I didn't
totally
believe
does. He totally does.
I'm like, come on, stop it. So then he sends me an email, and then he messages Colby and I, letting us see the pictures that he's referring to. He talks me into putting in one picture. Now he's just saying share another one. So I'll let you be the one to decide here, Stacey. No pressure.
Come on, Stacey, tell us.
Is Colby calling away?
That's totally Colby. That's totally Colby.
Oh, Colby, yeah.
See? There you go. Come on, man. That is absolutely dude, screenshot that.
Gotta stop, collaborate, and listen. That's you, buddy. Yeah, 100%.
Hey, in that one, I can see it. I like I said, I gave Dave credit. I can see it in that one. One of the other ones, or some of the other ones you see, I don't see it. But in like this one, and I think you said another one, Dave, too.
Yeah, the red hat
I can
one.
see it. I can see it a bit. Yes, I can see it.
Oh my god.
Totally fantasy relevant stuff we got going
That's
on here, guys.
phenomenal.
That is something. We got a question here from Blake in the chat. Who do I start as my QB2? Fields, Stafford, or Russell Wilson? For the fact that Russell Wilson doesn't throw for a lot of yards, he's very efficient with the yardage that he does throw. In fact, he reminds me of a lot of Aaron Rodgers in that regard, his last few years in Green Bay, where you never really got the 400-plus games out of Aaron Rodgers, but you got the multiple touchdowns in each game. So I think I'm rolling Russell Wilson in. I'm rolling Russell Wilson in this matchup. I'm riding the hot streak here. Fields is coming back from injury. Stafford has just underperformed this year from a fantasy standpoint. Colby, what are your thoughts?
I'm going Justin Fields.
Rushing upside?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm with
Dave?
you. I don't know. I'm disagreeing with Vanilla Ice here. I'm going with a guy who's been on a hot streak, right? I mean, Russell Wilson has had two amazing games. Fields and Stafford, both coming off injuries, both on questionable offenses. I just want to roll with a hot hand. And, what's Russell Wilson done the last two games? It's got to be at least 200 yards and a couple of touchdowns, right? I mean, I'm okay with that for my QB2.
And Stacey?
Oh man. All right. So I'm looking at over-unders here. The Chicago-Detroit game, 48, although I think most of that 48 is going to be on the Detroit side. Stafford, I don't know. I just can't get behind that, even though their over-under is pretty high as well. I think I got to go with Fields just with the potential there that he's got. I mean, they're unleashing him today. I mean, they wouldn't put him out there if they didn't feel confident, in his health and his status out there. You think you've got more upside with Fields. I'm gonna go Fields. Swing for the fences.
There you go. Colby, we got another question here from Blake. George Kittle or Dalton Kincaid in non-PPR this week?
Dalton Kincaid.
Yeah, I agree. That's the running back and the tight end position are the two areas for the Jets that they are susceptible to. I think Devin White is going to see a lot of coverage opportunities versus George Kittle at linebacker. So yeah, give me Kincaid. Dave, what are your thoughts?
I'm going Kittle, but it's not by a lot, just because he is a safety net for Purdy. But I'd be okay if you went Kincaid. It's not in my opinion, not a clear-cut answer.
And then Stacey to round us off here.
I think I have to go Kincaid as well. I mean, Kittle's going to have those boomer bust games, right? And he's had some pretty good ones lately. I don't know that not just because of the matchup. I just, kind of think that it's eventually going to kind of fall off there. Yeah, I think I'm going to go Kincaid. They're just a little bit more consistent.
Depending on your roster, I mean, don't be afraid to put 2 tight ends, as in a tight end in your flex. I mean, I don't know how good you are depth-wise at running back and receiver, but if you're not that strong there, I'm okay with putting Kincaid or Kittle at the flex.
That's a good point, Dave. I mean, if you could, I could do that too. I could definitely get down with that.
Same. I have in one league where I'm very poor at running back. I have Samaje Perine and Josh Kelly as my 2 starting running backs, and I have Travis Kelce as my tight end, and I have Dalton Schultz as my flex. So I feel pretty comfortable with that rolling into this week. Rest of the season, that's another story, but that's just that is what it is. Again, the theme this morning has been a lot from me as far as slot wide receiver matchups this week. And we look at the slot wide receivers situation for Philadelphia. Coincidentally, the top 2 wide receivers for the Eagles who have played an equal amount of slot snaps have been A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. Problem is that they've also been playing a majority of the time outside. So is there anyone here that would ever think about starting in, let's say, a DFS play, Olamide Zacchaeus, who has been playing the most amount of slot snaps there for the Philadelphia Eagles, knowing that the Kansas City Chiefs give up, the Chiefs give up a lot of points to the slot. Nope, nobody.
No. I mean, the Philadelphia tush pushers, their ground game is really their number one. Obviously, AJ Brown is extremely talented. Devontae Smith is barely a receiving option, if we're being frank, let alone going to the 3rd option there. So I don't know if I really want to trust wide receiver 3 there for DFS.
Fair enough. We got Jonathan here in the Facebook chat, just tuning in. Welcome. Dobbs or Purdy? I feel like we should wait on JJ before playing Dobbs. I don't know if you should wait on JJ before playing Dobbs. I think he's been playing really well. I think the matchup here versus Denver's defense is the thing to pay attention to, in which case I think I'd roll with Purdy. Stacey, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I think I'm going Purdy as well, just for that same reason. The Bucs are giving up around 19.3 points to opposing team quarterbacks, and we just talked about the Broncos and how well they're doing right now. So I think I'm going to going with Brock Purdy.
All right, Colby. Outside the big names here on offense for both sides of the ball, quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes. Oh my God, why am I fading this other quarterback's name? You know who I'm talking about. Oh my God. What? Yes. Oh my God. Where did that come from? I didn't take my ginkgo biloba this morning, so I guess that's the excuse right there. We'll go with. You're starting Hurts. You're starting, I think, Pacheco. We saw what Pacheco did in the Super Bowl. I know it's the Super Bowl, but we saw him being able to run really well against this Eagles defensive line. Although the Eagles then went ahead and drafted Jalen Carter to help with run stopping. So something to pay attention to there. I still like, though, Isaiah Pacheco, DeAndre Swift in this matchup. Also, Travis Kelce. We talked about Rashee Rice. We talked about the outside wide receivers here. Anybody else ringing a bell? Maybe a Kenneth Gainwell here for a sneaky touchdown play for a prop bet, or are we basically confident in the main stars, in that they'll be balling out this week for fantasy managers?
Man, I think the Chiefs start to get exposed this week, man. I mean, like, if we're really talking about it, I mean, obviously Travis Kelce is, stud. Pacheco is decent. Who's the 3rd best option on Kansas City that you're safely trusting?
I think it's Rice, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have to.
Are you doing it with confidence? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Oh, maybe is he your flex, or is he your wide receiver too? Yeah. And a flex, I can live with a flex, but there's really not much after that. I don't know. I mean, I'm just wondering if that Broncos game was a sign of times to come.
I mean, we're gonna see if he's the next guy, the next rookie that benefits from the post bye. You kind of see that with rookies. Again, another walk down narrative street, but rookies after their bye seem to be okay. But he's the receiver with the most juice. That's just what he has. Kadarius Toney stinks, or he'll drop it. Sky Moore's just out there running laps. That's all he's doing. They don't even give him the ball. That's the worst for him. I feel bad for him because it's like, hey, you're just going to run these routes, but just know that like there's a 4% chance that we throw you the ball. But like make sure you run these routes really hard every single time on the 1 in 17 chance that you actually get the ball. So yeah, Rashee Rice is the most confident. The nice thing about Philly is they're so funneled with their pass attack, and now they don't have Dallas Goedert. It's just going to be all Devonta Smith and AJ Brown. Maybe a couple other guys get in there. Like if you're going to do the showdown slate for Monday night's game, maybe you could throw Zacchaeus in there just because I think I looked on DraftKings. He's like $1,200. So like that could allow you to get the other studs. But really by playing him, it's more so like, hey, I want to get the 5 best players in this game. And he allows me to do it more so than being excited about playing Zacchaeus.
Yeah, 100% agree. We got the Tootsie Pop 6 here on YouTube. What's going on? Quay Walker is healthy, so do I trust him to start? Yes, you do. In which case, if you have McDuffie, you can definitely safely drop him with Quay Walker back in the lineup for the Green Bay Packers. Stacey, anybody else on offense in this matchup we should talk about, or did we cover basically everybody?
I think we covered pretty much everybody. I mean, just to kind of go with what Colby was saying, regarding Devonta Smith, I mean, he typically thrives when Goddard's out, and he's out. So, start him up for those guys. And I just wanted to shout out real quick to Tootsie Pop, to Rachel over there in the chat. She's been putting together some really great things for women in fantasy football. We've been doing some Zoom chats, just getting to know each other. So shout out to Rachel for doing a great job with that and just kind of bringing together the community. It's been a lot of fun. So thanks for organizing.
Yes, definitely give her a follow over on X, or formerly known as Twitter. Just fantastic. Her fantasy football content she's been putting out there has been really enjoyable to read. So definitely check her out and her content, which I believe she's over at IBT Media. So just great stuff from her all around. 100% cosign there.
The last 4 or 5 years, the women in fantasy football has really increased a lot. Yeah, I mean, I know Michelle and Katie started it probably 5-6 years ago or something, but since then it's I guess grown a lot, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you want to see. You want to see equal representation across all the boards here, and it's amazing. It's truly amazing. Stacey, you were on the Women of Fantasy Football panel at the Fantasy Football Expo.
Nice.
Can you maybe just share a little bit before we finish off the talk of this game, just how what your thoughts on the experience were being there?
Yeah, that was amazing. So that was my first expo ever. I hadn't been to one before. And, it was just such a great time to get together and meet everybody in person that you talk to online. And, I always say, I mean, like some of my best friends I have met through fantasy football and this community. And it's just such a great place to meet people and, that have the same kind of, what am I trying to say here? Just have the same passion that you do for football. And, I play in a lot of leagues with friends and family members that, they're just kind of there, halfway through the season, they check out and, but like just being a part of this group and getting to know so many people that care as much about it as I do has been just phenomenal. And just the expo was great with that. Being on the panel with so many other women that, care about fantasy football the way I do was just amazing. And just meeting people from like all over the country and different countries too. It's just great. I mean, it really does bring people together. So I love fantasy football.
Well, we got a fantasy football question for you. Why don't you take this one before we head out here? Juan Pena Jr. wants to know, he's got Eckler as his RB1. Stacey, are you starting? And I know this kind of is a little painful, or maybe not because you're a Packers fan. Aaron Jones, Eric Henry, or Jalen Warren this week?
Oh gosh, those are three really good options. Jalen Warren has been doing so much lately and just really coming on. I don't really buy too much into like, oh, he's named starter this week. That I could really care less about that kind of thing.
Has he been? Has he been
I
messed up?
keep hearing that. Is that kind of what's going on? I mean, I haven't really fact checked that. I've just heard that in several different places from several different people who typically know their stuff. So I would say that, yeah, that's probably accurate. But I mean, who cares really? I mean, it's depth charts or whatever. I don't really tend to go by those. But gosh, Aaron Jones, this is tough, man. You have Eckler as number one. I think either go Jones or Warren. I think we do either way with that. I mean, I'm going to go Jones or Warren would be a good. Yeah, Jones, Warren. Let's see, Jones, Warren, Henry. What I would do.
Okay. Yeah, Warren has been the RB13 the past 3 weeks, averaging 12.2 points per game. So he's definitely been showing a resurgence there, which was probably why the Steelers, not for fantasy purposes, but I'm sure that's why the Steelers are like, hey, let's give you some more opportunities here. Okay, IDP side of the ball. So this one is probably going to hurt managers a little bit. George Karlaftis, edge rusher for the Kansas City Chiefs. Normally an automatic start. I think you sit him this week. I think you look for somebody with a higher upside, like a Jonathan Grenard, just because, while he is, again, a really great edge rusher, it doesn't help when you're going against, one of the best offensive tackle tandems in the NFL and the Philadelphia Eagles, who are great at not allowing pressure to the quarterback. So I think you move away from him this week. Drew Tranquil is somebody else I think you move away from this week, just because Willie Gay has had he's had the bye week to basically get over the injury he had. Leo Chanel, I think, is somebody who, if I had to start a linebacker for the Kansas City Chiefs, is somebody who I would start there. Chris Jones, however, defensive tackle in defensive tackle specific leagues, that is somebody that I would be comfortable starting, just because he doesn't have to face the aforementioned bookend tackles for the Philadelphia Eagles. On the other side of the ball for the Philadelphia Eagles, Zach Cunningham has been the go-to guy at linebacker for the past few weeks in terms of tackle efficiency and snap opportunities, not Nicholas Morrow. So I definitely would be rolling with him on Monday night. And then it comes down to the Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat show. And honestly, the problem with the Philadelphia Eagles is that they have so many good defensive linemen and edge rushers. You never know who it's going to be from week to week. You say it's Reddick, it's Sweat. You say it's Sweat, it's Reddick. Honestly, if you have either of them in your lineup, I would start them just because they have been shown to be elite there at the edge rusher position. And with that, Gator J, thank you very much for the donation. Appreciate that. With that, that's going to do it for the Fantasy and Frames pregame show for Week 11. I want to thank our guest, Colby Conway from Fantasy Alarm. Colby, can you tell the folks just a little bit as far as where they can find your work and what you're working on this season?
Yep. So on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Colby R. Conway over at FantasyAlarm.com, I have the DFS wide receiver coach and the Red Zone report. And then over at Big Guy Fantasy Sports with Bob Lung, who runs the Expo. We got the Consistently Cashin', which is a DFS podcast. And then we got a Prop It Like It's Hot podcast. And then I also do a little who's hot and who's not action over there each week as well.
And Colby also does some beer reviews. So I don't know if you've got a page or anything, but I've got one for you to review. The Tripel Caramelite. You ever had this one?
I do not think so, but maybe August of 2024, I will get to have one.
Gotcha. Oh, August. Very nice. Heading to Belgium?
Well, no, I'm hoping you can make it to the Expo.
Oh, gotcha.
And bring one. That's what I'm hoping for.
So
Gotcha.
A little fun fact.
Sorry,
So a little fun fact is, up until last year, the past few seasons, or past few years, going out to the Expo, Colby and I would find a way to basically be on the same plane heading towards Canton, and we'd have a routine where it's like we'd rent a car, and on the way to Canton, we'd stop along some to go to various breweries along the way. We were not driving, of course, because we preach responsible driving here. Ken Sonnenberg, one of the Fantasy and Frames OGs, he was the one who was driving, so thank you, Ken. But yeah, Colby knows his beer, so if you ever have any questions, hit him up also for that as well. Stacy, host of the Dynasty 365 show. I believe it's this Tuesday that you all are going to be recording as opposed to Wednesday. Is that correct?
Yes, we are going to be on Tuesday this week because of the holiday. And I believe we get our very own Dynasty Deviant back Tuesday. So something to look forward to for sure.
Very nice. And you also have a brand new segment coming on pretty soon. Can you just tell people the name of a little synopsis of what to expect?
Yeah, so I'm going to be putting together a fun little short on TikTok with Fantasy Court. Kind of goes back to my day job being a lawyer. I have a gavel ready to go, so tune in on Monday to find out who I'm going to hold in contempt.
Boom, love it. And of course, you can check that out going forward on our TikTok page, as well as on our YouTube page as well. And Dave, again, tell everybody one more time about Connect Go.
Yep, Connect Go. It's download the app. It's a place where you can book one-on-one time with guys like Jorge and Colby here. So they're analysts on there. So if you need some personalized experience, check it out.
All right, and of course you can find Dave at is it Fantasy Go NFL still on X? Is that correct?
I think I changed it to Connect Go, but yeah, if you look up Connect Go, yeah, it'll be there.
You can see Stacy at Stacy_Perez83, as Colby said, Colby R. Conway. And you can find me at Jorge B. Edwards. We'd really appreciate it if you followed also at Fantasy and Frames. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit the notification bell so that you're notified whenever we put out awesome fantasy football content, as well as follow us on all the socials, TikTok, X, Instagram, Facebook, you name it. So for all of us here today, thank you very much for tuning in. Good luck in your Week 11 matchups. And we'll see you this time next week. Take care, folks.